Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 3rd, 2020 City Council meeting of the City of Bel Air Beach. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Robin Aki. Here. Councilmember Mark Bean.
Here.
Councilmember Dave Gaddis.
Here.
Councilmember Jody Shirley. Here. Councilmember Rita Swope. Here. Vice Mayor Glenn Dunn.
Here.
Mayor Joseph Manzo.
Here.
City Manager Lynn Reeves.
Here.
And City Attorney Fred Riley.
Here. Okay, thank you. First item of business is the approval of agenda. Do we have a motion? Shall move. Second?
Second.
Any comments from the council? Citizens? All in favor of approving the agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, the motion passes 7-0. The agenda is approved. Item 2 is citizens' comments. Any comments on items that are not on the agenda can be made up here. I don't know if the microphone is on or not. If it's not on, just push it till you see the green light, and please leave it on for the next person. There's a code of conduct on the table, and there's also one in front of you. We ask that you please follow that. It makes things go a lot smoother for everyone. Are there any citizens that would like to address the council? I see no hands, so citizen comments are now closed. Next is the shortest presentation in the world here, the presentation of the sheriff, and I say that because they have, again, some excellent news for us. So, Sheriff, would you please come up and do your presentation? Did I take away the surprise?
I apologize about my voice. I'm getting over a little bit of an illness. Crime statistics are down versus last year. The biggest thing that we had in the city was a domestic-related battery, which occurred at the resort motel hotel up the road, which garnered an arrest. The people did not live in the city; they were merely here on vacation. The other big thing was somebody was arrested for a traffic misdemeanor for driving while their license was suspended and revoked. Again, not a resident of the city. We had hundreds of house checks, many direct patrols for traffic, ordinance violations in regards to making sure people are parking in the proper places they should be and not on the roadways. We had a couple of abandoned vehicles or illegally parked vehicles, suspicious persons, which usually is solicitors of some sort who get dropped off at the edge of the city, walk through trying to sell their wares. Quite a few traffic controls where we're monitoring traffic and trying to do traffic enforcement as well as traffic education. And outside of that, everything's quiet.
You didn't give the best piece of information.
And what would that be, sir?
That would be that for the third month in a row, we have 0 crime in the city.
And that's a
October,
wonderful thing.
November, and December, our crime statistics are 0.
Yes.
And I was kidding the officers last time. I said, I want you to improve on that. That can't be improved on. I was kidding. That's great. That's fabulous. Okay? That's as good as it gets. And that's something that I think every city on this coast and every city in Florida would be shooting for. So not only are we down about 15% from last year in terms of crime, but 3 months in a row now 0. That's great. Keep up the wonderful work. My compliments to you and everyone on the Sheriff's Department. Compliments to the city individuals too, who are keeping them advised if you see something going on. You guys are doing great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the audience or council? Thank you. This month we have Chief Mike Burton from the Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue District. He does a quarterly report for us, and this is the quarter. Chief Burton.
Thank you for having me. Let me offer my thanks to your staff,
for making your facility available to us. We use it quite a lot during the month for our own public meetings and for activities with our staff. So I appreciate all the help. It's one phone call away, and the staff's very helpful. The topics I'll cover, and I'll cover it all in 10 minutes, I promise, is an update on our department status, our financial status, some longer range plans that we're working on, some improvements in our water rescue capabilities. I'll go over the call data for the last quarter of 2019 in your city, a brief mention of short-term vacation rentals and some new information that we have to work with on that, and just a reminder on hurricane safety. And I realize it's only February, but that's just around the corner. So from a department status, again, all of our frontline positions are filled at this time. We are deferring some replacements of vehicles based on some funding concerns that I'll mention, but they're not frontline fire apparatus. It's some administrative vehicles, the district chief's vehicles, so some things we can defer without any untoward effects. We have an internal committee working on the replacement of one of our apparatus that is 18 years old, and we are resisting the temptation to replace it with a like and similar unit to what we've had. So we're going down an approach of a needs assessment to try to look at the district and the capabilities with our neighboring agencies, determine our unmet needs, and then try to make a vehicle selection rather than just a simple straight out replacement. Because we want to look very carefully at what specialty capabilities are needed and which ones are already available with neighbors so that we don't duplicate. And we are completing some technology upgrades that we've deferred for a number of years. One being as simple as daily inventory and maintenance checks are still done on paper in February of 2020. So we have purchased the software that allows a much more efficient way for us to handle that. Our financial status, the referendum that was approved last year, we are finally seeing the fruits of that with the tax collection that's underway. It nets about $1.2 million to us, which was very much needed. We did have a bit of a financial setback with Pinellas County, about a 5-year-old lawsuit agreement over EMS funding. There were 3 elements within the lawsuit that if the penny money were to be approved in penny 4, that the county would consider funding or reimbursing us $1.2 million for our ladder truck, $3 million for a fire station, and $150,000 for a fireboat. We kind of planned on that, and we submitted all the documents to the county. The apparent position was their only obligation was to consider it. They considered it and declined. So that was $1.2 million we were counting on. We'll adapt, we'll overcome, we always have. And we'll go back at that again next year, but that was a bit of a disappointing surprise. Our current reserves are 22.9%. Our longer range plans, in addition to looking at all of our apparatus, we've taken the first step in looking at detailed station location study to determine ideally where our fire stations should be. We intuitively know they're not in the right locations. So we've started working with a third party in conjunction with Pinellas County to evaluate all 3 of them. We got preliminary data about 2 weeks ago that suggests pretty strongly that the Indian Rocks Beach Station needs to move to the north, the mainland station move to the northwest, and the Indian Shore stations to move to the north. And that will give better saturation of coverage throughout all of our areas of responsibility. So we're going to continue to work on that. Our plan is to develop a 5 and 10-year longer range plan that we can bring to all of our constituent cities to try to gain support as we move forward, and hopefully try to gain some support for Penny for Pinellas, which again, we've never been able to take advantage of. We think they're great Penny projects, and they're going to better serve not only the district, but we also studied the region to make sure they support the region as best we can. Water rescue improvements, we've replaced a rigid inflatable boat. That's the one we use in the Gulf of Mexico that we can deploy into the surf. We made deliberate efforts to put a jet drive on it so that there is no propeller that can injure either a victim or one of our rescuers. And in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will have our first ever fireboat in service. It will be moored on davits at the Indian Rocks Beach Marina, and it will be the only fireboat between the city of Clearwater and the city of St. Petersburg. So we've never had those capabilities in the intercoastal at all, so we're kind of excited about that, and it's progressing quite well. The call data for York City over the last quarter of 2019, much like the Sheriff's Office reports, it's a rather safe, quiet city, which we should all celebrate. Our countywide goal is 7.5 minutes, 90% of the time. And anytime we miss that target, we peel the call apart to try to figure out what happened. Sometimes it's simple geography, but sometimes it's not. So I'll talk about the ones where we missed that target and why. During that quarter, 28 EMS calls for service, 2 of them trauma-related, 19 of them were either a person down, back injury, sick person, allergic reaction, chest pains, diabetic emergency, seizures, those types of general medical emergencies. 2 of them were for medical alarms, and 5 of them were for falls. And I just raise your awareness on falls prevention. We work closely with Pinellas County 911. There is falls prevention training available to the community. It's not a really high number, but falls have particularly tragic outcomes long-term for people. And I say that from a personal perspective because I lost my mother from a ground level fall. So it happens really easy, the injuries that come from that. So if there's an opportunity for any group to provide some falls prevention training, we'd be happy to do that. The average response time for EMS calls is 6 minutes and 36 seconds. There were 4 times in that quarter that we missed the target. Actually, there were 5. 4 of them were for calls that were downgraded by an emergency medical dispatching process that the medical directors approved. So they were downgraded to non-emergencies. And 1 of them was where the first due unit was already committed on another incident. So the unit came from further away. 10 fire-related calls. 5 of those were fire alarms, 3 for structure fires. I'm pleased to say gas leak was 1. That seems to have worked its way out. We were running quite a few of those here a few months ago, but that seems to have resolved. Average response times of 7 minutes and 26 seconds for fire-related calls. And the easiest explanation for the difference between the 2 call types is when our men and women are responding to a fire emergency, they have a lot of additional protective equipment to put on before they can leave. So that adds 45 to 60 seconds to the total time as they prepare for the call. We missed the target once by 19 seconds for a fire alarm. We missed it once because the first due unit was not available, and there were 2 that were downgraded to non-emergency based on contact with the resident who said, yes, my fire alarm went off, I burned toast or popcorn, and there's no emergency here. Short-term vacation rental, we are working with the State Fire Marshal's Office to gain a clearer understanding of fire code implications when 1 and 2 family dwellings are used as short-term vacation rentals. And it's an interest of an item of great interest throughout the state. Last Friday, had a conference call with the State Fire Marshal and the Chief Fire Inspector for the state. They confirmed our evaluation that what Florida Administrative Code prevails, and what the standards are, and when a 1 and 2 family dwelling is reclassified in its purpose as a transient public lodging establishment, there are some fire code implications that roll into that. In a nutshell, what those would require by either administrative rule or by Florida statute: electrically powered smoke detectors, with at least 1 of them being a specialized detector for deaf or hearing impaired, a primary exit that provides a means of unobstructed travel, so there has to be an exit path. There has to be a secondary exit that is independent of the primary exit. And then with the code, there are lots of provisions in there about window sizes, height from the floor, total opening, which could get to be a challenge in some of these properties. A maximum occupancy load of 1 person per 150 square feet. Battery-powered emergency lighting. A fire extinguisher to conform to some particular standards. and then rather easy ones to achieve, a floor diagram reflecting the actual exit pathway, and a fire safety information pamphlet describing the evacuation, where the smoke alarms are, that type of thing. Where we're finding it a challenge is, when we learn of these properties, because right now we don't have an easy way in any of our communities to really learn where those properties are other than complaint driven. We do not have a mechanism right now, even a fee structure, to inspect 1 and 2 family dwellings, because we've been prohibited from that for years. Because we don't do single family residences after they're constructed. So we're working with that, we're working with our attorney and others to try to get a very clear definition of how we proceed. We'll work with your staff on how to proceed here in using local ordinances that you've already adopted as the means to gain compliance. So you've already adopted some fire code language, which I think will be really helpful in that. I'll certainly report back on next quarter, and prior to that if you'd like, but it's a pretty fast evolving topic here, in a new area for us, inspecting what we would typically think of someone's homes. So hurricane planning, again, just look at ready.gov. It's the easiest site to go to. Not too early to start thinking about your hurricane planning, and get you and your family all situated. So any questions I might be able to answer?
Chief, I have 2 questions for you.
Sir.
First, okay.
Yes.
Do you have, what you just gave on that fire code, I'm going to be speaking later on about the assault that this city and all the other cities, particularly coastal cities, are under by the state of Florida and some of our legislators. And I don't know that there's nothing we can do about that so much, but there's a lot that we might be able to do code-wise over here. Do you have a summary? I was trying to take some notes here, but I couldn't go.
I'll be happy to
Could
send
you
it
get
to
me
you.
that? That would be great. I want to get it to all the council members here, because I think it's something that, whether they get it now or they get it in the future, it looks like this might ultimately find its way into law. And if it does, there's stuff that we can be doing on this council to be prepared for it. And I think fire code, not only, it's not designed to, to work against them, it's for the safety. I mean, what you just said about building occupancy, we don't want to have some house that has 50 people in it and it's 1,000 square feet. That's just wrong. So if you can get that, that would be great.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Second thing, it was very distressing hearing about the county and what they did to you. Is that over with? Is there anything, any appeal rights, anything like that?
It
Because
is.
that's a shame.
Yeah, it's over for this year's funding. Those penny projects were approved. I'm far from done with it. I just don't know what my next approach is. One of the options is if additional funding went into the fire station, the same language is used for the fire station. So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned about it as well, because it's the exact same language we'll consider. But if it went into the fire station project instead of the fire truck project, and it netted out the same, I'd be perfectly content. But we didn't see that coming.
This is the first I've heard of that.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any presentations planned between the big city, Suncoast League of Cities, Mayor's Council, things like that? Because this would be nice information to get. This is the first time hearing it, and I bet you a lot of other people don't know this, and I don't know what help we can be as either mayors, big city, or councils, but that's something that, you just, unfortunately, all the money you gained by the referendum, it looks like you lost with that.
And the amount's about the same.
Yeah.
And again, there are lots of demands on penny dollars, far more than they could ever provide. We took that settlement as a means to stop the lawsuit in good faith. So I don't know exactly why, but that seems to be the response. It was considered, you put in your letter, you documented every need you had, and it was not funded. So at the very least, I'm going to try again next year. All right. So thank you for your.
Yeah, to the extent, if you want to get between, to these other groups, I mean, any one of them, I'm sure, would be happy to have you speak and get that information out there, because I found with this penny money too, it goes to places, but it doesn't always go to cities like us. It goes to some of the bigger cities, and that's wonderful. They have their own fire set up already. Meanwhile, we're left on our own, and I can't even think about what it would have been if you didn't get the referendum right now, because you would be out in both of them. Yeah.
We would be in dire straits. So. Okay, any other
Any other
questions?
questions from council? How about citizens? Chief, thank you for coming here. You're always welcome every quarter or so. Feel free to come by.
Be happy.
Thank you. All right, now we have a special presentation on popular demand here, the Guide to Living with Urban Coyotes. We have Angela Scotton from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. She's going to make a 15-minute presentation, and then there's going to be a 15-minute Q&A session for the individuals in the room here. I will make only one suggestion. We're going to really stick to the 15-minute Q&A session, and then she's going to be available. Well, I think they're still meeting in the other room, probably with the Parks Board, because I don't see them in here. But when they finish, we'll go outside. There's a room across the hall. If anyone has private questions, you can speak with Angela directly on that. If there's public questions, bring them up over in here. So without further ado, Angeline, mic is all yours. Do you want us? We were going to come down, right? Marv, are you able to do that? Okay, we're going to come down this way.
So in the interest of time, I'll just go ahead and get started while the rest of the council's coming down. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Once again, my name is Angeline Scotton. I'm a wildlife biologist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. I really appreciate y'all having me out here this evening. I am a biologist who handles public complaints and citizen inquiries on conflict wildlife issues. So my staff and I, this is all we do within the agency, is talk to the public on a daily basis. You name the species, maybe with the exception of alligators, as there's another side of the agency that handles alligators. My staff and I are talking to the public about it. And coyotes are our #1 topic in this part of the state. Before I get started, I will say coyote management, especially in urban areas, is a complex and complicated issue. So I probably can't hit everything about it in 15 minutes. I'm going to hit the high points, but I'd be more than happy to take your questions, as the mayor mentioned. So one of the first questions we get about coyotes is, why are they here? They didn't used to be here, and that's true. When the colonists came to Florida in the 14th or 15th century or so, there were no coyotes here, but there were red wolves. So this map I put up on the graphic to show you is a history of the coyotes' expansion from the western U.S. to the eastern U.S. by decade. And I want you to see how fast they moved from the western U.S. to the eastern U.S. This is all while being heavily persecuted. So if you think back to some wildlife history in the last 150 years, society was wiping out predators. We were removing wolves, mountain lions, bears, alligators, coyotes. There was this sense that predators didn't belong on the landscape. And what we found, or what society found, was that was a really bad move. Predators are essential to healthy ecosystems, and a lot of ecosystems in the western U.S. without having wolves and cougars and bears there. So did Florida's ecosystem. We had red wolves in this state until 1920, and they were essentially hunted down due to persecution. Coyotes did not get a pass during this. Coyotes were exactly the exact same things we were doing to wolves, we were doing to coyotes. Yet, coyotes were the only one that were able to expand their range to every state in the U.S. with the exception of Hawaii in 100 years or so. That's impressive. From an adaptability and a survivability standpoint, that says a lot about coyotes. The reason why I keep going back to wolves, wolves are important to the coyote story because where you have higher wolf populations, you tend to have lower coyote populations. Wolves predate on and compete with coyotes. So without wolves, that was one of the major reasons that coyotes moved across the landscape to the eastern U.S. It's additionally one of the main reasons they moved into Florida. So I'm going to kind of go through this map a little quickly, but this map kind of gives you some graphics of how quickly coyotes were documented moving throughout the state. So these were different research projects that documented coyotes throughout the state of Florida. So by 1990, you can see they were in Hillsborough County. So it was a matter of time before they made it over into Pinellas. And as I kind of move through the years and move through the data, you're going to see that every single county is filled in. So you can find coyotes in all 67 counties in the state of Florida now. Additionally, their southernmost observation was in Key Largo in 2011. A couple important things about Key Largo. It's where the largest feral cat colony in the state is, so big guess why they decided to go there. And additionally, as you know, Key Largo is an island. So a lot of people scratch their heads and they go, well, wait a second, how did the coyotes get there? They either use the bridges or roadways, like the causeway right out here, or they swam, and it turns out they're really good swimmers. This is a photo from the Lake Worth Lagoon in Palm Beach County. If you're familiar with that part of the state, this is a big body of water. This coyote was so far out there, you can see the channel marker in the back behind him. So they can swim long distances. They can make it onto barrier islands like Bel Air Beach, like Terra Verde, like Sanibel and Captiva, Gasparilla, Siesta Key. Coyotes have all been documented in all those places now. So a little bit of coyote biology. I don't want to bore you with a lot of biology, but it's important to know a little bit about coyote biology to understand what it is they're doing here on the beach. Coyotes are omnivorous, which means they eat just about anything. I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. Adults range between 25 and 40 pounds. They do a really good job looking larger than they really are. They're long-legged, they're long-bodied, they're tall, but we have not found a coyote that's over 40 pounds in the state of Florida. Home range size is variable. So if you're out on ranch land, so think like East Polk County, they're going to have a pretty big territory. It's going to be about 15 square miles. In an urban area like Bel Air Beach, it's going to get really small. It's only going to be about 3 square miles. The reason why is in urban areas where people are, they can find more food in a smaller space. They don't need such a big territory. There's garbage, there's pet food, there's birdseed, there's raccoons and rodents and armadillos, and they can make a better living in urban areas than they can in rural environments. There's a common misconception with coyotes that we're pushing them out of their territories, and that's why they're showing up in urban areas. They're choosing urban environments because they can make a better living there. Unlike most other wildlife species that get pushed out due to development, coyotes are choosing to come in because of development. Coyotes mate in the winter, so if you have breeding adults in the area, they're mating right now. They have pups in the spring. Litter size is on average about 6 pups in the litter. What makes coyotes pretty interesting from a canine perspective is that they are monogamous. They have really strong pair bonds. They mate for life. Additionally, the male coyote is very involved in raising his young. He is there every single step of the way raising his offspring. Unlike male dogs that have no parental responsibilities at all, the male coyote is very invested in raising his young. So I mentioned earlier that coyotes will eat just about anything. FWC did a diet study in Florida, and we were kind of looking at what was sustaining them. So this pie graph is giving you some results. Not surprisingly, the biggest piece of pie are things like mammals, so rodents and rabbits and squirrels. What was surprising, and it's going to be a little hard to see, it's on the left side of the graph, it says anthropogenic. That's human-related foods. That's what's pulling them into our urban environments, and that was a bit alarming for us. I have some photos of some stuff we pulled out of coyote gut contents, and I realize it's around dinner time right now. These pictures aren't graphic, but it does give you a good representation of what they're eating in urban environments. So the first one is from Pensacola, and this is dog food. So hard to say how the coyote got it. Could be someone was intentionally leaving food out and targeting this animal. Could be that he got into some dog food somebody left. Dog food's really high in calories. This animal probably spent no energy at all to get it. So this is a major draw in urban environments. Second picture is from right here in Pinellas County of a coyote that was hit by a car. This animal had cooked chicken in its stomach. So again, how did he get it? Did somebody intentionally feed him? Did he get into some trash? Did he hit a neighborhood dumpster? Hard to say, but these two items right here are big reasons why they're thriving and doing so well in Pinellas County. The next picture I have is a McDonald's wrapper. So this is representing some garbage. And I don't know if you can read on the slide there where this coyote came from. He came from the Ocala National Forest. So this is a massive area of public land in Florida that this animal was still able to find human-related foods. And the last picture I have is a total of 47 small mammals that were found in the stomach of one coyote. These all look like mice to me, and it takes a coyote about 5 hours to digest his meal. So this guy was an excellent rodent catcher, catching almost 50 mice in 5 hours before its death. That's incredible, just from that standpoint, if only they just stuck to rodents and not other things. All right, so Ecological impacts. Are there ecological impacts to having coyotes in Florida? Potentially there are. One potentially good ecological impact is they contribute to our aesthetic value of wildlife. People come visit Florida and move to Florida for our wildlife viewing opportunities. If you can catch a scene like this where a coyote is tending its young at the den, it's rather endearing. So coyotes certainly contribute to our aesthetic value and our nature viewing opportunity, which is valuable in an interest of most of us. Additionally, they could have ecological impacts on our native predators. We considered this with both the bobcat and the Florida panther. However, we don't think at this time that coyotes are negatively impacting either. While Florida panthers are still endangered, their populations have been slowly increasing. If coyotes were negatively impacting panthers, we should see a decline in panther populations. And bobcats, we're finding that they both like to live in the same environments, they both like to eat the same foods, but they're both coexisting with each other, and that was from a recent study from Dr. Marty May with the University of Florida. Another potential ecological impact of coyotes is that they can control smaller predators. There are some scientists that think coyotes are filling the role that the red wolf left behind in Florida by contributing to a more balanced ecosystem here. So let me give you an example. Let's take raccoons. You can have as many as 25 raccoons per square mile, even if they're not artificially being fed by people. That's a lot of raccoons. And there's one thing that raccoons are really good at besides getting into trash. They're really good nest predators. That's their thing. They are really efficient at finding and destroying and eating nests. So if coyotes are helping to control raccoons, they're indirectly helping some of our endangered and threatened bird species like roseate spoonbill, bobwhite quail. Now, this does not mean that if a coyote came across a bobwhite quail nest or another ground nester that they wouldn't eat it. They would totally eat it. But they're typically seeking out the smaller, more efficient nest predators like raccoons than they are of nests themselves. That being said, on the flip side of that, coyotes can also predate on rare and endangered species. And so that's something to consider when you're here on the beaches, where you have shorebirds and sea turtles and other imperiled species that are using the beaches right now. The thing to consider before removing coyotes from beaches is that not every coyote is a good nest predator. Usually, if they learn how to do it, you have one bad actor, for lack of a better term. If managers remove all of the coyotes from the beach, you're opening yourself up to allowing some of those smaller, more efficient nest predators to come in, like raccoons. If there's no coyote here, there's going to be more raccoons coming in behind them. So managers kind of have to weigh this out when they're having coyote problems on beaches. What we would recommend is not removing them all, but removing the problem animal. And you can target the problem animal in theory and remove it, but that's a lot harder, a lot more difficult than it sounds. Coyotes are pretty hard to trap. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Additionally, another negative about coyotes is human conflicts. This is what I'm talking to the public most about on a daily basis, are human-related conflicts that come with coyotes. The biggest one is pet loss. And I don't want to sugarcoat it for you, coyotes will absolutely take free-ranging pets. As long as cats are available and free-ranging and outdoors, they are 100% open to predation. And it's not just coyotes. It's bobcats, it's alligators, it's panthers if you're in panther country, it's large raptors. There's a lot of bad things that can happen to cats when they're outside. Coyotes are a bit more notorious for it. It's incredibly tragic to have a pet taken by a predator. It's tragic for me as a pet owner and as a wildlife biologist to get the phone calls from residents who have lost a pet to a coyote. Most of the time, coyotes don't leave anything behind when they take cats. Sometimes they leave pieces, and that's really hard. For small dogs are also at risk of predation by coyotes and bobcats and alligators and all those other predators I just mentioned. Typically for small dogs, when coyotes take them, it's when they're not on a leash, it's when they're not with a person, and when they're not in a fenced-in yard. It's usually first thing in the evening or first thing in the morning. A little dog goes out to the bathroom by himself with no one, not on a leash, not in a fenced-in yard, coyotes there, takes advantage of that opportunity. by keeping pets secure, keeping cats indoors or dogs on short leashes or in well-maintained fenced yards, you can prevent most predation attempts by coyotes and other wildlife. Additionally, we get a lot of questions about human-related safety when it comes to coyotes. Attacks by coyotes on humans are exceedingly rare. And so what I've done in this graph is to kind of show you how rare it is. So between 1970 and 2015, looking at both the US and Canada, there's an average of about 9 attacks by coyotes on people. When coyotes bite people, we hear about it. There was just a couple in the news recently. There was one from New Hampshire, and there was one from Chicago. It makes national headlines when coyotes bite people. There's almost always a reason behind it. So for the recent examples, the New Hampshire coyote appears, and I haven't confirmed this, but it appears to have, appears to have been diseased. It was a rabid animal from all accounts. The Chicago coyote, if you look at video footage of that animal, it was limping heavily. That animal had a gunshot wound to its chest and was likely more aggressive because it was in pain and trying to recover from an injury. In Florida, we've only had 3 people bitten by coyotes in 2 different cases. We had 2 coyotes. In one case, one animal bit 2 people. Both the coyotes in those instances were rabid. So coyotes can carry rabies, but it's pretty rare. Those 2 coyotes I just mentioned in Florida were the only 2 who ever test positive in the state as well. So when you compare coyotes to domestic dogs, there's more than 1,000 emergency room visits in this country every day from dog bites. There's 5 million cases a year that require medical treatment, and there are more than 200 fatalities between 2013 and 2018 caused by dog bites. If I remember my statistics correctly, you're more likely to be killed by a car collision than you are to be bitten by a coyote or killed by a coyote, especially if you're doing the right things, like not feeding the animal or getting between the animal and its food. So you might be asking, can't we just get rid of all the coyotes? Can't they just all go away? And you probably know the answer to that before I say it, and it's no. Coyotes are here to stay. Eradication efforts for coyotes have failed dramatically. Remember I mentioned earlier how much they've been persecuted. Everything we did to wolves, we've done to coyotes. We've poisoned them, we've shot them from aircraft, we've trapped them, you name it. We've done every almost unimaginable thing to coyotes that we did to wolves. We nearly wiped wolves out. They're gone from the eastern seaboard pretty much. They're almost gone from their entire western range. But coyotes expanded. The reason why it has to do with their breeding dynamics, where coyotes are locally pressured, they'll start increasing their reproduction, which is kind of unheard of for wildlife. What's sustaining coyote populations is food and space. So if you start removing coyotes from the population, all of a sudden there's more food and space to support more. So the coyotes next door start increasing their reproduction to compensate for that gap. This is why eradication efforts have failed for coyotes across the country. Landowners can remove nuisance coyotes on their properties if they wish. I'm going to kind of move over that in the interest of time, but I'd be happy to take questions on that if there are any. Yes, sir. I will wrap it up. Thank you very much for keeping my time straight. We really suggest preventing problems with coyotes before they start by securing garbage, cleaning up fallen pet food and bird seed, keeping cats indoors and keeping small dogs on short leashes. Because you can't get rid of all the coyotes, really drive home the fact that you should prevent these problems before they start. You can also haze coyotes. For more information on hazing, this is just establishing some human dominance, letting them know they should leave the area. We have a video on our website on how to do that. And I'm going to move right through the summary of the facts real quick because we went over all these points, but the main take home is that coyotes are everywhere in Florida today. They're in every major city across the United States. DC, Denver, LA, all have coyotes living in them now. If you have any questions that I can't answer today, you can certainly call our regional office, and I will be happy to take questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for keeping me on time.
Thank you for the presentation. 15 minutes now for questions. Is it easier if I go back up there this way? See how I get something useful in 15.
Okay, do we have some questions from the audience? I'll start on this side, and I'm going to move to this side. How about we do it that way? Gentleman in the blue jacket. If you just stand up maybe and just say it as loud as you can. That
Sure, yes, I have two questions. Have there been any sightings in Bel Air Beach? And number two, is there any repellent that can be placed around the yard to keep them away?
Okay, so first question is, are there any sightings on Bel Air Beach? Yes, there are. Are there any repellents to keep coyotes away? There's some limited research on using predator urine around your property. So this would be like wolf or cougar urine. You can get it synthetically. You can get it from any major box store that you buy hunting supplies. Some people really swear by it and say it works really well. Other people say it really doesn't work very well. I have not tried it. That's the only repellent that I'm aware of that may work. The biggest drawback to it is that it smells really bad, and you need to reapply it after it rains.
Questions from this side of the room? Jim?
So the county uses a catch and release on feral cats. Have you all considered maybe doing the same with coyotes?
Sure, so the county has a trap neuter release program for feral cats. Have we considered doing that with coyotes? We have not considered doing that with coyotes. Wildlife don't respond typically well to sterilization efforts. There's only been one study done on coyotes that I'm aware of, and that's from out west. The biggest drawback with a TNR, a trap neuter release program for coyotes, is they're really hard to catch. So catching them is the hardest part. There's also a cost involved in sterilizing them. And then there's another question of, do you just let them go back into the community? I would think a lot of residents in Pinellas County would say no. If you catch it, you shouldn't release it, you should get rid of it. Most sterilization efforts for wildlife in other parts of the country, and again, this hasn't been tried very often, it's been mostly done with deer, but they have mostly failed across the country. The biggest thing with coyotes is that you guys, as a community, have it within your power right now to control their population, just by controlling food. The less food they have, the less reproduction they're going to have. Does that make sense?
Gentleman in the back?
First of all, thanks for the work that you do. Question on best practices. You've seen a lot of counties, you visit a lot of counties. It's sometimes a sensitive subject when you have a neighbor that has fruit trees or an area that isn't sealed under a staircase going up to the second floor. How have you seen communities get together to really do the right things as a community to kind of close down a little bit on why they're here, which is primarily food?
That's a great question. So what have other communities done to kind of help alleviate the coyote issues? The biggest example I can give you is Atlantic Beach, which is outside of Jacksonville. They partnered with FWC and the Humane Society to write a management plan for their community. One of the biggest factors to that is they do yard audits with their residents. So it's typically a volunteer with the city that goes out to a resident's home that's having coyote sightings, and the volunteer identifies everything that would be bringing coyotes onto the property in an effort to try to help mitigate that. Management plans are kind of new in Florida. They're really popular out west and in Canada. The city of Sanibel is also considering a management plan at this time, and I believe the city of College Park is also considering a management plan. If that's something you all would be interested in, let me know. I'd be happy to help you with that.
Great, thank you. I'm going to take 3 questions from this side if we have them. Anyone? Gentlemen?
I don't know where about figures for 8.9, whether I'm mistaken, over the last 50 years, but anybody can go on Wikipedia and see hundreds of cases of coyotes attacking children and adults. And the most important thing is that these are increasing rapidly as the coyote population increases. And they certainly don't seem to be timid. Just in this parking lot out here, my wife and I saw 2 months ago, saw 2 coyotes 20 feet from the sheriffs. So they're getting used to people around here. The other thing you said that these studies on eradication failed miserably, but for these studies on barrier islands, on well-developed barrier islands, that's what's important in Bel Air Beach and in Long Beach. There's only a few places for coyotes to hide in Bel Air Beach and in Long Beach and such. It would be a big effort to find out where they are. Two cases of rabies. Coyotes are a rabies vector species. They're one of the few species in North America that transmits rabies. That's why they think
let me address some of those concerns if I may.
Sure.
The facts on Wikipedia are often incorrect. I can provide you the publications where I got that figure from for the 8.9 per year after the presentation if you'd like. The second question on eradication of coyotes on barrier islands. Technically, yes, you could eradicate coyotes on barrier islands. Realistically, it will fail. The mainland's right there. There's plenty of coyotes on the other side. It will take just a matter of time for it to recolonize. One of the perks, if you will, of coyotes being on barrier islands is you can't support that many. There's less space here than on mainland Pinellas, so there might only be a few over here. Without GPS collar, you couldn't tell you how many there are. The concern on rabies. Yes, coyotes are a rabies vector species. So are bats, so are raccoons, so are domestic feral cats in the colonies in Pinellas County, so is any other mammal in this area can carry rabies. The fact that we've only had 2 coyotes in Florida that have tested positive for rabies bodes pretty well for us when you look at the amount of raccoons and feral cats and bats that have come back rabid. So yes, are they rabies concerned? Sure, but so is every other wild mammal in the state. And I don't think we should move through an eradication campaign of all mammals just because of a rabies concern. It is a fairly rare disease in the state. I believe you had one other one that I glossed over. Can you repeat the one I missed?
Let's see, rabies. Opening up the sign.
Oh, putting up the sign. So
Or also letting people know that coyotes around here are digging up sea turtle eggs.
sure, so we do have some signage that we can provide. We provided a template to one of the retirement communities in Clearwater that have them out now. Additionally, I gave your city manager some posters today that can be put up. Atlantic Beach made a sign out of the poster that I gave to the city manager today. So yes, absolutely, signage is I think, a really good move, especially when it comes to food. One of the major draws for coyotes on beaches is food. There's garbage being left out on the beaches. So controlling the food on the beaches may help coyotes not predate those imperiled species that we're so concerned about.
Other questions from this side? Now I'm going to go back to this side. I want to try and keep it balanced here. That was a series of questions. Anything else here? Anybody else here? Your second questions. Anybody else have their first question? We're good? Second question, good.
Okay, so I know Pinellas County drops by helicopter bait into heavily fenced wooded areas with a rabies vaccine for the raccoons. Do you all consider, or have you considered doing anything like that kind of program for the coyotes?
Sure, so have we considered doing a oral rabies bait drop like the counties have done in similar fashions for raccoons? We have not considered that. That's typically a Department of Health and county and USDA related operation. I can tell you that the county of Miami is moving forward with that move, not because of rabies and coyotes, but because of rabies and raccoons. They're having a lot of rabies issues with raccoons in Miami-Dade County, so they're moving forward with the bait drop. There's a recent publication, and forgive me, I can't remember the source, but I can find it, that is confirming that those rabies bait drops for raccoons works on coyotes. So they're finding that coyotes are consuming that oral bait as well, and it's, in a sense, what's the word I'm looking for, vaccinating them against the virus like it would for raccoons. The biggest problem with the rabies bait drop in Florida is our climate. The bait itself doesn't last very long, and the heat, it disintegrates pretty quickly.
Patty, how are we doing on time? Okay, I'm going to open, before we go back to any more audience questions, council. Questions from the council.
From a statistics standpoint, I'm kind of a numbers guy. You compare the number of coyote bites to dog bites. It's a huge number from the dog bite side, but I mean, we all live with dogs. They're in our families, our homes. You look at the population of dogs, apples to apples, what's the real number? I mean, we don't live with coyotes in the neighborhood typically the same way we do with dogs. Kids are playing with the dogs, that kind of thing.
Sure, so there's millions of dogs, and forgive me, I'm probably wrong on that statistic, but I would think there's at least millions of dogs in the United States. I would imagine there is just as many potentially of coyotes in the nation. Please don't quote me on that. I don't have any research to support that, and nobody's looking at how large or abundant the coyote population is. But I would think it's got to be at least 1 million mark from a North American perspective. So sure, from apples to apples, maybe comparing dogs with coyotes isn't the best approach. We wanted to do that to show a canine of similar size that we're all familiar with, the bite rates, and a canine that we have a lot of good statistics on. If we were to compare another wildlife species like raccoons, I believe you would see that number way up compared to coyotes. Especially in Florida, where I'm a little bit more familiar with the numbers. I don't want to throw out a raccoon number, but it seems like we almost have a bite in this state by raccoons at least once a month. Whereas with coyotes, we know 3 statewide in our entire history. So even comparing other wildlife species that are more common, the bite rate from coyotes is very statistically low.
Yeah, and that's my point, is, it might be better apples to apples comparing it to some of the other wildlife incidences rather than the domesticated dogs and animals.
Point taken, thank you.
Council, any other comments? I just want to make, I'm sorry, go ahead, Robin.
No, I was just going to say, I want to say thank you very much for coming. I have a biology degree too, so I totally got everything you were saying. And no, you're very well researched and you have a lot of information, so thank you very much for
Thank
coming.
you for having me.
I'll echo the thanks, and thank you for coming to the community. I'm also going to mention that if anyone has individual stuff, I know the gentleman here, I've met you before, I know we were talking about this in Indian Rocks. You're going to be available outside. There's a conference room right across the hall. Feel free to go out there, and Angeline can spend however much time she has available. I just want to make one comment, because I heard this from somebody, and I just want to reinforce this, and the sheriffs are in the back, you can confirm this with them. Please do not start hunting these things. You cannot discharge firearms or any other items in the city. And we live really close by, so if you miss with something, you're going to have more problems than the coyote if that thing goes through somebody's house. So please do not discharge anything. That's not the way to take care of coyotes. Bang. The one thing that you were talking about before was, and I read your brochure, but it basically talks about if you go outside, have a can with some pennies or something, make noise. These things will run away generally, but firearms, non-coyotes, not in Bel Air Beach. So yes. One last question. This will be it, okay?
Mayor and council, would you agree we'll be asking for the assistance on management program to audit the city would be helpful?
Thank you for reminding me. You volunteered that. If you would, to the city manager, maybe pass that along, and then we'll take a look at it on the council here and see what we could do, management-wise, if there's anything that is within our powers. So that'd be great. But thank you for the great information, the great presentation. I know we can talk about this a lot. It has been a really hot topic. I know on social media people have been talking. There's a lot of misinformation. We got the real information tonight, and I really appreciate you coming out and helping us. And again, anyone who wants to partake and spend some time here getting more information, she's going to be right available across the hallway.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Anyone want to? Thank you. Okay, so we move on to item 6, which is the board reports. I see some people from some boards. I see Rudy Davis, he's going to represent the planning board. June, you're going to do Parks and Rec. Rick, are you going to do finance? And do we have anybody here from Charter Review? That would be you, Joey. Your vice, right? You want to do something just briefly? So, okay, we'll let you go last. I'll put you up to that. Who wants to go first? That doesn't matter. So.
See ya.
Ready? Just for the people who are in attendance who don't know what's happening, we've got all kinds of review committees going right now. We've got the planning board, which it's a regular board. They have been charged with coming up for taking a look at each one of our properties, taking a look at any potential uses for the property, any alternatives for the property, something that I don't think has been done in many, many years. It might have been done piecemeal, but now they're taking a look at each and every property. They just started in the beginning of the year. Finance Committee is a newly convened group, and the Finance Committee is looking at every facet of the city's finance for ways of doing things better, ways of maximizing our return on income investments. Parks and Rec Board is a regular committee, but we know that they've been doing a lot of new things for the city, different events, and they're still working on things like that. And the Charter Review is once every 10 years, and there's a bus on council and some citizens that are meeting to actually review each and every facet of the charter to see what we might want to change that would have to go to the voters ultimately. So without further ado, Rudy Davis from the Planning Board.
The Planning and Zoning Board has met twice in response to the City Council's charter for the board to review city-owned properties and possible sources of revenue. At the first meeting, we received available city records for those properties and a copy of the charter. It was noted that some properties were lacking deeds or other pertinent records. A search was initiated by the city manager and chairman J.C. Infeld. An organizational discussion followed and each board member was asked to review the information they were given to determine if there are restrictions of use for the properties in question. At the second meeting, the board discussed the various properties and noted the restrictions that would challenge their development or use for revenue purposes for the city. Some of the issues noted were that the small parks generally had stormwater outfall drains that could not be built over. As a result, the mayor instructed the board to concentrate on the City Hall property, the Cedar Street property, and the Marina property. It was noted that the Marina property is encumbered by the requirement for 70 dedicated parking spaces to qualify us for beach renourishment. The Bayside Park at City Hall is restricted due to PERDAP grants, as is Morgan Park. With those restrictions noted, the Chairman Infeld instructed the board members to look for workarounds or alternative uses that may allow the properties to generate revenue for the city. And at our next meeting, February 18th, we will discuss the board members' ideas for alternative uses or other opportunities that could bring additional revenue to the city. Any questions?
Mr. Davis, have you met, or anyone on the board met with any outside consultants at this point? Not engaged in, but just met with them. I'm talking about commercial realtors, developers, people like that.
No, but I think in the discussion, city manager has noted that he has spoken with someone, and that information will be presented at the February 18th meeting. At this point, the board has really just identified all the properties, all of the known restrictions to their use, and now we've got to look for workarounds or thinking outside the box. And so with the knowledge we have at hand, that's the next purpose. I know also that Lynn and I have been talking with Water and Navigation with regard to the marina, the intent to look for additional docking space within the city in any area. So we have to identify their concerns and what their limitations are, or what they would approve essentially for additional mortgage or additional rental income. And I think we all have some ideas, but we can't discuss them because of sunshine law violations outside of those meetings. But the next meeting should be very important as to what we've been able to come up with.
I just want to expand on something you said, because I said it at the council meeting last time. I wasn't able to attend the first meeting, and the vice mayor was there and gave some good background. There was a pretty obvious, when I listened to it, it was a pretty obvious situation where there was a lot to do in a very short period of time. We had asked for returns by April. It wasn't that we were trying to give you some ridiculous deadline. It's that if anytime we sell or change, if we try to sell any properties in the city, we're not selling the park, but one concern is there's a building, we call it the White House, but it's a storage building that we utilize, and that's a possible candidate for something like a sale. We have to go to voters, and the reason why we asked for that deadline was that it would give us time to be able to get it on the November ballot. When it became obvious, at least to me, and I know the vice mayor also had mentioned it to you in the first meeting, try and focus on the 80-20. 80% of the money, if you will, is in 20% of the property. So that was what it was doing. I wasn't trying to speak for the council, but I think given the fact that there's just no way you can evaluate each property by April, look at the big stuff. And if anyone in council disagrees, we can deal with that right now. But the other properties, we still want to look at, but I think that's going to be something that you look at a future point. It would not make this election. I don't see it, given their limitations. So
I know that what we're essentially looking for rental space. And one of the thoughts initially was the second story of this building, give ourselves 10,000 square foot of high value rental space. We talked to, Lynn has talked to the Carter Jolly, the original engineers that did this building, and it was not constructed foundation-wise or wall strength-wise with the ability to second story, unless you want to vacate it long enough to do that, and it would cost $3-4 million to do that. So, and most of what we've seen so far is going to take a bit of investment to find any return. You've got to do something to the property to develop it. But we're working on it, and we think we can meet your deadlines.
Excellent. And one of the things we've stressed was thinking outside the box. And this was an example, actually, it was, I don't know if it was your original idea, but you were the one who brought this up. And I thought I had heard everything for what we could do with this property. And Rudy Davis came and said, we could put a second story. And I had never heard that from anybody. So, okay, it was a good idea. It's not going to, I mean, we could do it. It's going to cost a fortune, but we could do it. But think outside the box. We were talking about the 70 parking places. I said, well, go up a level and we still could have parking and put a parking garage. So anything is on the table within reason. No, we're not going to spend $25 million to put a second story. That's a financial decision. But anything's open, and to that extent, these are open meetings. So anyone in the public who has an idea, speak with them, send them a note or something like that. They can bring it up at the meetings. But I thought that was an excellent idea. And it doesn't work, but that's the way we get great ideas. Council, we have any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Rudy, you talked about the next meeting. When is the next meeting?
February 18th, 3
We don't
o'clock.
have that on our list. Okay.
I just had one comment. We talked about it in the finance committee. There's a lot of great discussions going on in these individual groups and boards and committees. And I would hope that maybe there's some more cross-pollination going on rather than just hearing the 5 or 10 minute spiel when you come in to do your board reports. Maybe sitting on each other's meetings, because there's a lot of discussions and ideas being thrown around on the periphery of these things that maybe you can latch on to. Great, thanks.
Citizens, any comments? Oh, hang on one second, Mr. Davis. Let's make sure there's no one from the audience. No? Thank you. Thank you to the group. Who was the lucky person who's going second? That's Rick. Rick is chairman of our finance committee.
Rick Schock, 115 13th Street, Delaware Beach, Florida. And thank you, Vice Mayor Gunn, because it's clear that we need to talk, because we have some duplication, maybe triplication of efforts. But our Residential Financial Advisory Committee, we've met 3 times so far. When I was here last month, I met, where I briefed us very, very simply on our first 2 meetings. We're meeting tomorrow. We're at the point now where many good and in-depth ideas have been floated, and now what we're trying to do is capture those and put those into a presentable format for the council. It's our intention to, and I believe we've been invited on the 19th to the work session, so it's our intention then to give some pretty solid recommendations to the council to consider with dollar figures attached. So tomorrow we'll be busy, and then we'll look forward to seeing you on the 19th. But be a little premature, I think, to do any of that tonight. But I would say, Rudy, at some point, you and I'd like to get together with you and get all those ideas together. So that's where we are right now. But it's going well. We are definitely thinking outside the box. I promise you. So.
Council, some questions? Citizens? You're getting off easy.
Yeah, well, it's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've sat on some of your meetings. I know others here have too, and you guys are doing a tremendous job. So yes, I think if you get with each other, it'll be fantastic. That'd be great. Jim, Parks and Rec.
I can't promise you mine won't be, mine is not going to be as short. First of all, Mr. Davis, I would like to get with your board because the marina actually falls under our realms for the park and recs. So I'd like to get with you and maybe throw out some ideas on increasing some revenue at the marina, if you're available. And then second of all is our car show's coming up. Mark your calendars. It is the 22nd of March, and from 2 to 5, and it will be here at Bayside Park. Same system goes. The only ones that will be allowed to bring their vehicles in are the cars participating in the event. The park will be, the entrance down here will be shut off, and City Hall will be used for the visitors parking for anybody attending the show that's not participating. We laid out tonight some of the categories, and what we have decided to do as a board is the fact that since this is our very first car show, we've got a basic outline of the categories. But as we start getting people registering for the event, we're actually going to add categories. We'll have a special meeting and add those categories, but we don't know what kind of people or cars that we're going to have attending this at this point. You know, we're going to reach out to some car clubs and so forth, but at this point. So our basic outline right now is we're going to allow trucks, muscle cars, vintage pre-1960, and replica Kit Kat kind of cars is what they call them at this point. And so when we do our flyer for this event, we're going to eliminate some of the things. The city manager gave us a car registration form to kind of critique a little bit as a board and see what we like. And they recommend that our board recommend that we take off all these car classes for now and just go with the regular registration form at this point, and then make up the flyer basically as a general outline, not give any particulars about it. You know, don't break it down so much, because when you do, you might start eliminating someone who might have come and then they decide not to come. So with this being our first event, we're going to try to keep it a little bit vague as far as car classes go. We have the trophies. It takes a week to print off the plates, so it's, you know, we have a time, we haven't, I want to say we don't have as much of a time restriction on trying to make that happen. We have the Wounded Warriors that are going to come and set up a display. Emergency Management of Pinellas County approached me at the council meeting in the Big C the other day, and they would like to come and set up a display and continue partnering with us and getting as an outreach to the community and making people aware of things that can happen in the community. So I've agreed to let them bring in their stuff and set up a table for that. We're only going to have 45 vendors, so the first 4 or 5 that apply, that's all you're going to get. And then we're having one dessert kind of truck. At this point, we've reached out to Polar Ice. If that doesn't work, then we'll get Kona Ice to come in. And so only because it is from 2 to 5. We don't have to have hot food. We don't have to have, just have to have drinks and maybe some kind of dessert. Councilmember Gaddis has agreed to be our DJ. Just music, okay. He's going to supply the music, the sound system, and one of our board members is going to supply the tent for over his equipment, so that's already secured. And so as of now, pretty much everything's in motion to get that moving forward. We had a planning session tonight as well, and some of the things that we have agreed upon and we will need the council's approval of, we don't want to lock in dates, because if you lock them in too far in advance, and we have conflicts from the council and so forth with different things. But here's the months that we're going to do these things. So we're thinking, and they're not in any particular order. I just came from our park board meeting, so right into here. So we want to do a beach party in Morgan Park, okay? And we want to do that in July, and with a cookout. And we're thinking around either the 3rd or the 4th for that one. And then we want to do a 5K race in May 3rd for that. That one we do have a particular date. And we actually have 2 people, somebody who put on one before within our city, that is Burke Serafian's wife has put on one before. He's agreed to run it if the council approves it, him and his wife. And then Festival by the Sea this year, we're going to plan on it being in November when it's cooler. No more dunk tank this year. But the council members can sign up, and the mayor, to be the target by a pie throwing contest. And that is to raise money, so keep that in mind. Okay, and then we in November, we'd like to have a tree lighting ceremony, okay? And so what our idea is, the person who's our park board would vote on who is giving the most to this community for the year, who's done the most for this community for the year. That person would actually switch on the tree, turn on the tree. Then we would come in here and have cookies, hot cocoa, that kind of thing, Santa be here, that kind of thing, and just make it a community kind of an event. Very simple, but very, very nice, very tasteful. Music in the park, I had a request for that. So we're looking for June for music in the park. And we'd like to start maybe thinking about doing that a little bit more, but we want to try it out. This is all trial stuff we're doing. So then I had a fashion show tea. It actually raised a lot of money in some of the other cities for their different special, I want to say charities and things like that. So that's something else to think about. We're thinking somewhere around January for that. So keep that in mind. Boat parade. I've had a lot of requests for a boat parade from a lot of guys. I worked with the city of Indian Rocks on this, and I spoke to them in depth, and they actually don't want a sister with us because their boat parade right now takes 2 to 2.5 hours to put on. But that being said, they're willing to lend us their boat captain who has been doing theirs for years, and as long as we don't do it on the same night. And she's willing to work with us on everything. She's already supplied me a copy of their forms that we can submit, we can use, and I'll give them to the city manager, and he can give them to the city attorney and they can take a look at them. One is the registration, and the other one is basically kind of like a policy. But anyhow, so what that would entail is basically, we would have the boat captain lead it. Some of the council members and board members that have boats would be strategically placed in the parade, so to make sure everything runs smoothly. We'd start at one point and another point, and that would be it. The reason that Indian Rocks won't team up with us, theirs is about 2.5 hours. The Reddington Shores, I believe it is in Indian Shores. I don't know, the two of them team together, and it goes like 4.5 hours, and they said that their city manager said it's just way too long, so that's why they did not want to team with us on it. Otherwise, they would be more than willing to do that. So we'll not be doing it on the 16th of December, but we're looking at maybe the week before that. So just kind of keep that in mind, and when I come to you to get your approval on all of those things, that date I have to nail down with you all, just so you know, for a boat parade. I have to nail that down. After speaking for a long time with the City of Indian Rocks' park event person, she said that that's something you have to start months in advance planning and putting together. That is one thing you just cannot get around. So that date will have to be down in stone with you all. So I will be approaching you on that to get that done. Next, I want to talk about the park grant. Now, I've met with most of you on this council about this park grant. It is my job as the park chairman and our board, and I have my vice chair here and my secretary here from my board, is to promote and try to make sure that this continues to happen. I know there's been some rumblings, so I'm going to read a statement that I wrote. I'm coming to you today to discuss the Bayside Park Grant. We were chosen second in the state to receive this grant. It takes a lot of hard work, and to be done, it has been done by our city manager and Kyle Reefer. The council approved submitting this grant last year, and money was put aside to start funding our portion of this matching grant. Now I'm hearing there might be no money to pay for our portion, when in fact some of the money that was put aside for this was taken away last year because there was supposedly no money. But yet the city ended up with $307,000 that was not spent. Where did this come from, I ask you? The fact that we were granted this amount of money says a lot of hard work and efforts that was put into this. In this city, we'd like to continue receiving grants and free money for this city. But if you can't do this, our reputation would be tarnished by not taking them after being awarded them. Do you know how bad this makes us look as a city and the city manager look? I hear there's more grants to be had for a multitude of much-needed repairs for the city. But again, if we have a tarnished reputation, what do you think our chances would be of getting more grants? I'm here today trying to help some of our money woes for funding this. This grant was voted on by a prior Park Recreation Board and City Council, but it is the council and the current Park and Recreation Board's responsibility to make it happen. So we are recommending a fundraising campaign to help ease the burden of our financial responsibility as a city to this grant. So what we are proposing is sending out city emails for residents, business owners, and other ways to help us reach our goal, requesting that they donate money. Like donating money or basically buying one of the proposed items. We also will make flyers, have a chart made showing updated fundraising amounts collected. We will post it on the city website, and donors of at least of a certain amount designated by the council would receive an engraved plate, and big donors would receive a plaque. And all donors will be thanked in the city email, city website. But if this city wants to be a premier city, as our strategic plan says, we have to stop stockpiling the money and start investing in our city. Every year that we let things go, we end up paying more money for repairs and upgrades. Does the repairs and the increased inflation cost save us more money than we are making in interest by waiting to do them? You have to ask yourself these questions. Bayside Park was let go and not maintained up to the standards of normal parks because of so-called money issues. When we look at parks and when realtors and prospective new owners look at the properties, they generally look at what the community has to offer, like parks. Yes, folks, parks are a big attractant. Every time we invest in making our community more desirable and appealing, we are also increasing all our property values. And it increases the tax income for this city, which outweighs what we would be investing in part of this grant by far as a city. So we say, let's come together as a city to continue to strive to be a premier city, as our strategic plan set refers to. So please continue to fund this grant. Thank you.
Thank you, June. Council comments, questions?
I have a comment. It sounds like you're in the right direction. I like all the events that you're planning. Some of them are going to be a lot of fun for the city, and I look forward to seeing what happens. As far as funding goes, let's see how the council weighs in on that at later.
Anybody else?
First off, my kudos to you and your group. You've brought this way beyond any imagination that I ever had, and probably most people on council ever had when we thought about revitalizing this parks board. To think that a year ago, we pretty much had no activities, and now we're talking about all these activities. This is really getting us into a high-end type city in terms of the work and stuff that we have to offer our residents. And most of these are small events. So it sounds great. You need formal council approval, so if you want to come to the work session and hash any of this out, if not, we have to get you at least approval for some of this stuff so that you can move forward. You don't have to get approval for everything, but I'll leave that to you as to what you need immediately. I have two comments for you. The car show, being a collector car owner, I don't know if you have considered a rain date, but it's probably not going to rain in March, but just in case, you might want to have a rain date. Collectors will not bring their cars out in the rain. Mine don't go out of the garage, so most people will not do that. So you might want to have an alternate date in case it's raining and have a way of notifying people. That's that. And I'm good with that thing, that pie contest is out. I'm not doing that. And I'm not sure about Rappin' Dave, the DJ here, but we'll see. I'm sure he'll do a great job. I'm kidding. Thank you for hearing, Dave. So it sounds good. Go forward. This is great stuff, and I'm sure it's going to be well received in our community. These are small events. When you say music in the park, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about little ensembles, right? We're not
Right,
talking
little
about
little
Woodstock.
ensembles, maybe a small jazz group come in, bring your lawn chairs and just listen to the jazz music, that kind of thing, maybe a little music and a little bit of art, something like that. Very, very simple.
Classic.
You can bring a bag lunch or dinner, I want to say, bring your picnic and sit on the lawn and listen to the music kind of thing is what we're thinking about. So yes, very low key, but yet it's something to bring some of the community out. So.
Council?
June, I'd like to say thank you very much for keeping this alive. It's been a wish of a lot of people to have these parks upgraded. And I know Lynn has put a lot of work into it to get the parks in the shape they're in now, which was a heck of a lot better than it has been in the past year. So I am looking forward to the entertainment that you brought forth. It's a great idea. It's just for us in the community, primarily, and it will help bring people out and meet each other.
Right.
And I hope we decide to move forward on the park. I think it would be a wonderful idea.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
June, I missed that also. I want to thank you also for that and keeping this alive and the incredible effort that I've seen you put in. I mean, every day it seems June's telling me I'm going to lobby somebody and she can't talk to me about it, so she's out talking to the people on the council, and I know she's kind of made you all, go with her to these parks and take a look at them. But this is something that was previously supported. I see former Mayor Notaro sitting in the audience. I remember when she was sitting here and I came up that night and spoke in favor of it, and I know Leslie Notaro was in favor of this also. So this is something that I think a lot of people in this city agree on. It'll be nice to see if everyone can get together behind this. I know how much work Kyle and Lynn did on this thing. I was on the Parks Committee at the time. The Parks Committee did a lot of work on this thing, and a lot of effort went into this. And I hope we can find that money, and if maybe aided by a little fundraising and stuff. It would be a sin to let this kind of money, $200,000, go by the wayside because we can't fund it. So I hope we can.
And I want to reiterate the fact that we got second in the state. I mean, that's just basically unheard of. So the fact that the city manager went through and Kyle went through this much work to get that amount of money should be, you all should be thanking him to no end, but yet I'm hearing rumblings that we might not have funding for it, but you need him to reach out and get more grants from the future for free money for this city, okay? Yeah, an incentive is not, after he's gone through all this work, to not follow through with what you've asked him to do. So I'm going to caution you on that, okay? He went through a lot of work. I heard all the different meetings that he had to attend, all the things, all the work went behind it, doing the diagrams for this. I mean, it was a lot of steps. It was a lot of work. So I really caution this council against, dropping this from their plan. I really do.
May I add something, please?
Sure.
Is that the concern of the grant, since it's such a hot topic right now, is not so much, I don't think, the funding, although that is a bit of a concern. It's that we tie up our entire assets of everything at City Hall, all the surrounding parks, for 20 years if we accept that money. So there is a second side to that. So we need to be aware and make sure that residents are aware of that. It's not just money. There's other things to look at.
Yes, I agree. There is, but that being said, though, I mean, do you see the city getting rid of that park was donated to us in 20 years from now?
No, but we've talked about, we just heard from the Finance Committee and from Planning and Zoning, and there's a push to get rid of the White House. Well, the only place to put that storage facility is on this property. If we tie it up, then we can't do those things. So we just need to, and I'm not, this isn't a discussion for that right now, but we're dragging out the financing, and that's really not all of the storage. So, just throwing that little bit of information in.
But, that being said, that we have when we talk about financing and stuff like that and so forth, when you still have to build a building, we actually have spots out here we never use. We could put up a building even on this property to house some of that equipment. There's actually under this building right here.
Excuse me, I'm gonna, in the interest of time, we're at 7:30 already. Jody's right, this is a discussion we're gonna have again.
I
Jody's point,
plan.
it is a valid one. There's encumbrances placed by this grant. There's encumbrances placed by just the grant of this park to us already. That's what we're finding out from the planning board. So that's why we have all of these groups working together. Lynn, I think, is the deadline June to respond on this thing? This grant?
Yeah, there's some things we're gonna have to do by the early part of June.
So we want to keep this on our radar. I mean, it sounds like we're going to have some debate, and I think maybe we need to have that at a work session. Doesn't have to be this next work session, but we need to have it, and you just keep us advised, if you would please,
Yeah,
of the deadline, because, you know, this deserves the best efforts, but I think we have a number of things. Jody's right. I mean, if we do something, you know, I know one of the proposals, you attach the bathroom. If you attach the bathroom to the building, then we can't sell the building. So little things like this, you know, make big changes. So we need to hash this all out, and so, but not tonight. It's not going to do it tonight.
But our park board would like the fact that the council's approval to try to start a fundraising campaign, because if nothing else, that money can be put into the park and used, even if we don't take the grant. We do a fundraising campaign to raise money to upgrade the park, with the caveat, you know, with the fact that we might not still take the grant, but still start a fundraising campaign, because all that takes time to put in place to make it happen. So you know, I actually would need that to start pretty soon. And I had met with the city manager about this. Him and I had a meeting the other day about starting a fundraising campaign. And all the money, any money we collect, is still city money. So I don't see a downside to that, as long as we are collecting money to put into that park. And then if we should come up with anything to match that grant and decide to take it, we have it.
Mayor, could we discuss that at the next work
I was gonna say,
session? And then if something comes about, we can vote on it on the next council.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. That exactly.
Okay, so
If
can
you
I
don't
ask
mind,
that I get put on the next?
I'd like to call a point of order. I think it's just too much back and forth for this meeting.
Okay.
I agree. I agree. So, I agree personally. Problem later on, but agree with you against June.
No,
We don't
you're
want-
correct. You're
Hang on,
correct.
hang on, June. Okay, hang on. Let me talk. Okay, I agree with what they said. He's called a point of order. We're going to table this for tonight, and we've had a long report. Okay, this will be, make your presentation, bring your crew to the next work session, okay? Make your presentation. You will get consensus, but not approval from us that night, because we can't give you approval. Your approval will basically be at the next council meeting, and you'd be good to go. You'll know right how you stand, but this way you can think it out, because, I mean, I do have questions, like what's gonna happen if we collect money and then this thing doesn't launch, how do we get it back? So there's gonna be some questions. So let's, Patty, if we would set it up as one of the work session items, and I'm gonna, if there's no questions from the audience at this point, I wanna move on to the next items. Okay, any other questions? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's go on to the consent agenda. We have approval of three minutes. It's approval of January 6, 2020 work session minutes, the approval of January 6, 2020 city council meeting minutes, and the approval of January 22nd, 2020 city council work session minutes. All three together is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So I have a first and a second by Dave Gaddis. Any discussion on council? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Consent agenda 7, 8, and 9 are all approved. We move to item 10. Authorize the city manager to execute an agreement for development and implementation of a stormwater fee. The descriptive on this is to request to authorize the city manager to execute an engagement with Bryant Miller Olive, attorneys at law, to provide special counsel services for establishment of a stormwater fee program in an amount not to exceed $35,000. This, I think, was the city manager's point, right?
Yeah, just clarification, it's 36,000.
36, I'm sorry, I read that wrong.
Mayor and
Yes.
council, this is the preliminary stuff that we need to do. I want to make you aware, after I had some discussion with the city attorney today, and I spoke to Chris Rowe for us to get validation, at whatever point we get to, we're gonna have to take out a small loan for some equipment. And what Chris told me, it could be $25,000 and over a 2 or 3 year term. So that goes to the stormwater. And to get that validation, it will cost us an additional $10,000. But this is getting us to the preliminary part. And if we're going to go forward, we can move forward with this and come back to you with, and it may not cost 10, it may be 7 or 6 or something like that. But to do that, you have to have a loan of some type. It's kind of like what BEI did. They haven't had a loan, so that's why they went to validation. And I spoke to Chris, and I also spoke to Fred, and both agree, and I guess at Main City, Fred said they did the same thing to get the validation. And I think we want that validation in the long term, so that money isn't challenged. So this initial thing, we'll do the study.
Hang on, let me get a motion, then we'll get it back to you, okay? Because let's make sure this is being considered, okay? So do we have a motion? I'm not putting in the extra 10,000. This is just on the way I read it, with the exception that Lynn was right, it was 36,000, not 35,000. Do I have a motion on item 10?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so now it's open for discussion, and Dave Gaddis, you moved it. If you want to move, if you want to speak, or if you want to give it over to Lynn so you can finish what he was saying.
I'll yield to Lynn.
Okay, I'll bring it back to you.
Yeah, I've outlined the situation, so if you have any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them, not ask them. And I'm sure Fred could weigh in on our discussion.
You want me to weigh in?
We go back to Dave because he made the motion. Dave?
Sure, good running.
Okay.
Well, the discussion Lynn and I had was about the validation, and the purpose of doing the validation is to go through the court proceeding to have the circuit court approve of what you're doing. The good thing about doing the validation is you, in essence, close the ability for somebody to come back a year, 2, 3 years later and challenge it. If it were my decision, I would not do it without a validation, because I think it's important that the city have certainty and in essence, finality about the decision that you're making. I can explain the validation process if you'd like.
I wish you would, because I understand it, we're like suing ourselves, but basically tell it to everyone if you would, so that everybody knows what a validation is.
Validation process is initiated, and the nominal defendant is the state's attorney, and in essence, you're going to court. It's a one hearing process where you go to court to prove that you have met all the requirements of law in going through the notice and process to put in place a valid, in this case, stormwater assessment that complies with all the requirements set forth in the Florida statutes that relate to stormwater assessments. And it's a good thing to do because you get finality, and you don't have the potential for having to refund money. There's a very famous case, I've read it, although it's been a long time ago, and it put, not that I have chills run down my back very often, but in reading this case, a county several years ago had to refund 3 or 4 years worth of assessments because they didn't do it right. And they didn't validate the result, and that case is a very monumental thing for anybody that's doing an assessment. And I again say that the city simply shouldn't be in the position of having that income stream be in doubt. So that's what Lynn and I talked about, and I'm content with the discussion with him and what he related to me about talking with Chris Rowe with respect to this.
Lynn, could you tell me a little bit why, you started to explain the 10,000, and it went over my head. We have 35 that we have to spend for this study. 36, up to 36, you could spend less. I want you to bring this home like at 25. But what's this other 10? Is that, what are we doing?
That's mainly for the validation that you have to do, and that's what I was talking about, where, in the discussion that I had with Chris, he said as an example, he had one city that went out and purchased $25,000 worth of equipment that had to go to stormwater, can't go anywhere else. And they took a loan out on it for, I think he said 3 years to me. Well, a loan for $25,000 for 3 years isn't a lot of money. But it's the requirement to be able to validate, do the validation.
Even though we have the money, essentially, we have to create an event, if you will, so that we can get it into validation, basically.
Right, that's what Chris told me. And you know, I'll have further discussion with him because, you know I talked to Fred about this, but I thought, well, I wonder if we went ahead and bought all the check valves, so we get a better price, if that would work as part of the equipment. So that's a discussion I'll have with Chris on the side, but that's, you know, just a first thought coming out of my mind, because I don't know. Well, we'll figure that out.
So I understand.
So what I'm asking tonight basically is to approve this agreement, so we can get Chris started on the legal issues, and to also get Stantec moving on their requirements to validate the fee proposal. And all of that's included in it too, so that would be.
I know we've used Stantec before on BEI, right? Did we use them before? I thought it said in here that we've done prior.
No, we use BMO.
Okay.
And they're going to be a sub-consultant for BMO.
You're satisfied with Stantec? That's their choice for subcontractor?
Yeah, and they are too. I mean, Councilmember Shirley and I had several discussions about this, and I think we're okay with that. And Stantec's a very well-known firm, based on the BEI experience with Chris, I think we turned out a good project, and we got through all the legal stuff that we had to do, so I'm very happy with Chris.
Council?
I have a question. It states that you're going to provide a list of partials that this will impact and that will be responsible for this charge. Isn't it not going to, is it going to be citywide for all of the property owners?
Yeah, what they do is they do I'll call it like a survey, and they determine what impervious surface, and they create a plan for the whole city, and then each parcel shares equally, and that's what they'll create with the methodology that Stantec is doing.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, so it looks to me like we're going to have to vote 3 times on this, is that right?
No, the proposal is just, right now, the proposal is for BMO. They will take care of Stantec, so it's basically approving that portion. When we get to the validation situation, we will have to vote on it again. Trying to remember. If it comes in less than 10, of course, I'll notify the city council. You know, I have the authority to add to that, but I still have to have it in the budget. But, you know, I would notify the city council. I'm not going to just do that on my own.
And then the loan on top of that.
Yeah, yeah.
We haven't passed this yet. I mean, this is to get the funding mechanism in place, to get the legal studies, but then we are going to have that hearing, and we're going to make sure that the citizens.
Right, just to explain, we have to provide the plan for the equipment, okay? And it's kind of the same thing we did with BEI. We did not have the loan until after we had the validation, but we still had the validation knew that we were going to get a loan.
May I ask a question? Just for clarification purposes, you keep saying a loan to purchase equipment, but the loan is really to purchase equipment to do the repairs for the flooding, not lawnmowers or something unrelated. It's for equipment that will repair the problem.
It can only, it's kind of like the stormwater fee. The funds can only be used for stormwater, it can't be used for something else. We're not validating buying lawnmowers or anything like that.
It sounds to me, everyone here knows we have a flooding problem. It looks to me that it gives more of a concrete evidence that we do have a problem whenever we're financing parts to make these repairs.
Right.
Am I reading that?
That's the start of it, with this agreement. For them to do the study and for Chris to do the legal documents that we need to move forward.
This is just step one, the study.
This study is pretty much the seed money to get us started on the stormwater fee process. And the stormwater fees are really a low-hanging fruit right now for the city to increase revenues and offset some of the infrastructure backlog that we have. City manager sit down and he scrubbed his capital improvement priority list there, and he's got some new numbers. And then when it was applied to we did some calculations on the reserve burn rate, how far we could get down the road. And after updating those numbers, without stormwater fees, in fiscal year 23, we're basically down to 8% of our existing reserves today. Now, if we go to a stormwater fee scenario, and it's just actually a pretty low impact. $120,000 a year could offset our capital improvement budgets. $120,000 a year basically equates to, everybody wants some numbers, but it's basically about $10 a month in stormwater fees for dwellings, and even less than that if we've got the formulas right for condos, which we're not sure. Well, maybe backwards there. But if you apply stormwater fees to this burn rate of our reserve, guess what? In fiscal year 23, we're actually putting some money back into our reserve fund, and we're actually at 41% of today's existing reserve. So you can see there's a huge difference. And if we incorporate the stormwater fees, it could really resolve some of our problems with this infrastructure backlog. So it's low-hanging fruit. I think this is the first step, and I think we really need to move in this direction.
I have one question. This is not in our budget right now, right? So you're going to do a supplemental budget request?
We'll have to do a budget revision, or a budget amendment, I should say. But I'm going to hold off on that a little bit, because we may not have to do as much. So when it gets probably closer to May or June, then we'll, if I need to do some amendments, then we'll do it. But I'm still going to take it out of the stormwater. That's the plan.
Right.
And we had a pretty good savings on 3rd through 6th Street. We returned about $45,000 from that project. So it's watching what they do and limiting. So
if we can find it, that would be great. And I don't want this to be lost on council, and I most definitely don't want this to be lost on the citizens. We're going forward, well, at least going forward the preliminaries to do a stormwater fee. I am going to fight until I can't talk anymore about us going out and getting any possible source of revenue, grant money. I've already provided the same information I had to the city manager. It's just a start. It's a few items right now, but I want to make sure we truly beat the bushes with every source of revenue beside going to the public. As far as I'm concerned, this is just like a tax. It's a fee, but it's a tax. And before we do that, before I vote for the final one, I want to make sure we have exhausted every possibility of trying to get money. And when somebody tells me we've done that, then it leaves us no choice, because I do agree with Councilmember Gaddis. We need to do something about this stormwater. We've been talking about it for a long time, and it's not going to get any better by itself. So, any other council comments? Open it up to the citizens. There being no comments, it's back to council. Any comments? Dave, you moved it. Any last words?
Nope, I'm ready to call a vote.
I'll call that vote, thank you. And with that, Patty, roll call vote, please. Okay, so let me say we're authorizing the city manager, I'm going to get it right this time, to execute an engagement for development and implementation of a stormwater fee not to exceed $36,000. Thanks, Lynn. Patty.
Councilmember Dean,
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Councilmember Swope,
Aye.
Councilmember Aki,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Aye.
Mayor Manton.
Aye. So it passes 7-0. City manager, you're authorized to proceed, and you'll let us know if you have to tap the budget, but hopefully keep up that good work with finding cost containment on these projects, and maybe we won't have to actually expand the budget and stay within our budget. That's great. Move on to item number 11. This is to authorize the city manager to execute an interlocal agreement with Pinellas County for replacement of dune walkovers. This is an authorization of agreement for construction of replacement dune walkovers at public beach access sites. And this basically, as I remember looking at this, I think it's everything north of 21st Street, is it? 21st and North?
It's 21st, 25th, Howard, and Harrison. Those are the beach accesses.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Marv and then Jody. Jody second.
Second.
Okay. Marv, you have comments, or you want to turn it over to Lynn and I'll get back to you?
The only comment I have, I know the work has to be done. It's a long time coming, and it's finally here.
Council comments? Lynn?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this is a request I made over a year ago to the county, asking them for some funding for the beach accesses. They're basically dune walkovers, they're boardwalks, and I'm sure some of you have been on some of them. They've been around a very long time, and the county is funding other cities' assistance, not funding them 100%, but they're assisting with other cities' boardwalk improvements. I think this is an opportunity to get some of that funding. The agreement lasts till December 31st of 21. We would have to go out to bid. We do have some capital funds that are funded for the beach accesses that are, available to assist with this. But we'll have to put it out to bid to see where we come in. But I think we'll be able to do those four. And what that will do is build the dune walkovers back up out of the sand. And if you've been on one recently, you know that a lot of the beach walkovers are under the sand or close to it. So they have funding for this, and they do it with some of the other cities. And I knew about it, so I said, hey, how about us? So they gave it to us. So that's a good thing.
Here's my concern. I want to rain on not your parade, because what you did is great, but this was a little concern of mine coming in tonight. When I heard Chief Burton talk, this just became a major concern of mine. And it's Section 4, Section 5, termination and fiscal non-funding. Essentially, the county reserves the right to terminate this contract upon 30 days written notice to the other party if conditions arise such as lack of county funding in accordance with Section 11 below. And then they talk about in Section 5, if appropriations by the County Board of Commissioners are reduced or eliminated, authorization for continuation and completion of work and payment associated therewith may be rescinded at the discretion of the county upon delivery of notice to the city. And I was a little bit concerned about that, but when he just told me what happened to $1 million worth of fire equipment, my concern is this. I'm not worried that they're going to terminate this for our lack of getting it done. I'm sure we're going to get it done just fine. But this is almost at their discretion. And the note that I had to myself is there any way of getting an interim payment? Because this calls for payment at the end of that project. I would hate to see us expend all this money, and then they pull out their pockets and say, sorry, we're broke, we can't fund this for you.
Well, with this specific thing, I don't see that happening because they have been funding these for many, many years. And it's my intent to get this out to bid and get it finished. This isn't a year-away project, to be honest with you. This is a project that's pretty simple. You're gonna go out to bid, or basically boardwalk. So, I think that's something that's pretty simple, and I'll be coming to the council asking for authorization to do that. And Kyle is getting some preliminary numbers for me as we speak. Just, we've had some people come out and look at them, so. I know it's in this year's budget, and I don't expect it to go away. It's kind of like, it's like the penny money for Gulf Boulevard. Because that's kind of where this is, well, I know that's where it's coming from. It's coming from that penny money for beach renourishment that they dump in there, and that's where his budget is from. So
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you think you can get this done before the end of this fiscal year so that they can't change their mind at the county?
I'm hoping, but it depends on the bid process and everything. That's depends on a lot of things. But building these, this isn't, no, they can put these in, and there's 4 of them. I would think they could do all 4 of them within 30 days at the most.
Is there anything this council can do to expedite your approval process? I mean, special meetings or what have you to get, because it sounds like they're pretty well along on this.
Well, we're gonna collect this data, and then we'll put something together, and I'll bring it to the council, and then as soon as the council says it's okay, it'll go out to bid within the next couple of days after that.
I'm just running a little gun shy after what I heard the chief say, and, I don't, if we can make sure we nail this year, that would be fabulous, because it sounds like the money is there this year, and they change their mind, so, as long as you're confident, I'm kind of relying on you on this one, because I'm not sure what the history is, so.
Well, I can tell you from this, that there's never been a history of them not paying. What agreement was in the fire thing, and I don't really know, because it really wasn't brought up at our task force that I served on last year, so.
So what I hear you saying, Lynn, is the only holdup's going to be the bid process. You pulling together that bid process. So probably by April, we'll be ready to make a decision and get everything signed for you. Is that correct?
Yeah, April, May.
Yeah. Okay. I just have one request, and I had Patty print copies of this. When we're doing this, can we include adding the cigarette butt dispensers at each beach access? Because I've done beach cleanup, and straws are not the problem, cigarette butts are. And so everyone has this at their desk, but it's just a dispenser and a little fact finding on what cigarette butts do and how long they stay in the environment, And so my request would be, can we include this in the project?
I don't know what those cost off the top of my head. Let us get some numbers on, you gave us a picture of the little.
What I've seen at Calabisi.
Yeah, we'll see. Those may be negligible.
Yeah. Okay.
If they're kind of like those little, like we have out here at the back door, those are negligible in cost. So we wouldn't even probably include them in the project, because then they'd get a markup. It'd be better for us to go direct.
Okay. Just a request while we were talking about that.
Council, any other comments, questions? Turn it over to the citizens. There being no comments, we're back to council. Any other comments? Marv? What? With the last word.
The last word is let's move forward.
Patty, would you please do a roll vote?
Councilmember Bean,
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Councilmember Swope,
Aye.
Councilmember Aki,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dunn,
Aye.
Mayor Menzo.
Aye, it passes 7-0. And City Manager, you're authorized to enter into the interlocal agreement as described in item 11. Item 12 is the status report for Bellevue Islands Estates. BEI undergrounding is requested by Mayor Gunn and is to provide the council and residents a brief update regarding the cost, schedule, and performance of the project. That's the City Manager Reeves, so I'm not sure who's presenting this. Is it you, Lynn?
City manager.
City Manager, okay. All right, so with that, City Manager.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a slideshow, and I want to thank the Vice Mayor for, actually, he did most of the work on this. I just gave him a bunch of numbers. So I want to thank him for the help, and we had a little discussion was it Friday? And where I got this beautiful document on Sunday. So we're going to talk about the Bellevue Island Estates undergrounding project. It's been a very successful project, and there's another street that's looking into it, Harrison Avenue. And I know I've had one other street come and get a petition, but they haven't moved forward at this point. So the big change is a couple pictures we're going to show. This is the way it used to look, kind of like in, I guess I relate it to China or something, where they had a lot of wires hanging around. Not picking on China, but you know. And what it looks like today with no wires except the new street lights. Just to share with you a couple pictures of that. Another picture showing all the wires, and to the right what it looks like today. So, some of the background. This project will improve the reliability for adverse weather, the chance of wires coming down. We did a double loop system, which means it's kind of in a circle where if something breaks at one area, it's not going to affect everyone. It's only going to affect the portion of the area, and it's newer, improved infrastructure. The safety, the hardening, the new street lights, I'll talk about that a little bit later. The aesthetics helped with the, it improves the area, the overhead view when you're looking at that Bellevue Island Estates. It's completely different. And it was financed entirely by the residents of Bellevue Estates Island by special assessment, kind of like what we're doing with stormwater. The total estimate was $2.2 million, which included 10% contingency in that amount, so $200,000 in contingency. The city partnered with the residents to put in solar lights. What we agreed to do was pay part of the cost of the solar lights based on what it would cost us to rent street lights for 10 years. And that amounted to in the neighborhood of $48,000. So with that, the project, the city's contributing to it and will, moving forward, take over the maintenance of the solar lights. But they have a 10-year warranty on them, so Clearworld will be responsible for that. Moving forward, just to kind of give you a little background, in March of 2017, we enacted the ordinance for the creation of the special assessments, and the residents developed a petition process, and they started on that in September, and they finished it around Christmas time of that year, 2017. During the next few months after the petition, it's not on these slides, I want to tell you that we went through the process of the validation that we talked about earlier. We went out and secured funds at some pretty attractive interest rates at the time. Found a bank that would take a 20-year loan based on assessments. So residents weren't paying a large amount up front. So we broke ground in April of 2019. That's when we first really started something. Put conduit in the ground, and a lot of you live in that area, you know what I'm talking about. Current completion is about 90%, and we're expecting to get done with everything by the spring of this year. Probably be late spring, but I don't want to overstate or make you overconfident that we're going to finish sooner than we did. But what we did is we removed 170 plus overhead wires, put all of the things underground. It's under budget. The contingency's not going to be spent, and there may be more than that. But so we're a couple $100,000 at this point under budget. I think the residents, from what I've heard, are very happy with it. I've heard a lot of positive comments, and hopefully the residents that live there, they're on council, that have heard those comments also. Solar street lighting, it's independent power system. It was bought from a company called Clearworld out of Louisiana. They're programmable, and we can, I can walk up to a street light with a iPhone or iPad, and I can change the intensity of the light. I can make it brighter at a certain time, make it go up and down. So that long term will be a reoccurring cost to the city because we won't have that electrical. And after the 10-year term, based on the information that I've been able to ascertain, our only real cost will, at that point, may be replacing batteries regularly. And we won't have that recurring cost that we had month after month for to put in a pole or construction and aid. If we decided to change the wooden poles, we would have had a substantial amount of money to play that. Sequence of events, and this is for any project in the future. The binding cost estimate is really the first thing that we need to do, and we've started that on Harrison. The cable costs, we need to do those things ahead of time, because we found in this project that some of the numbers that were given to them initially were a little misleading, and they weren't really talking to the people that were going to do the work, because no matter what anybody thinks, it has to be Duke that's going to do your own utilities. It's not going to be a subcontractor other than a Duke subcontractor. So going forward, we had to look at budgeting, the finance, assessments, and legal. And it was a long legal process. Future projects, there's still going to be legal expenses. However, the ordinance has already been set in place, so that's going to save the future projects the money long term. One benefit was this was 4 streets. It would be more beneficial if streets banded together. I think there would be some cost efficiencies and things of that nature. I know in Councilmember Shirley's case, there's 23 residents on Harrison Avenue. That's about 1/5 of the BEI project. So, there's going to be some additional costs unless another street or two decides to participate. And this gives us the opportunity now. We've been through it as guinea pigs, and we can thank the BEI's residents for letting us use them as guinea pigs. So thank you for that. We've captured all of that data and things. I have boxes of books that I've collected through this process. So it's very, very important, and it's very helpful for the future. And we're going to kind of use this for the stormwater fee. We're starting a process. There again, it's as Vice Mayor and I talked, it's another playbook. Some of the things that are still outstanding, complete from the bridge on 22nd Street. We've still got a subaqueous bore to do there. We've still got one street light, about 3 homes with some cable issues. And if there's any others that haven't told me that there's a cable issue, and you know about that, please let us know, because we talk to the cable people almost on a daily basis. Something that we need to evaluate, Duke Energy is giving us credit on the project. The thought is but it would be something that the residents would have to recommend there, to evaluate taking it all the way to Gulf Boulevard, to harden the power to the transmission lines. Right now, that power from BEI actually goes down Bayshore to 21st Street behind the houses and down to Gulf Boulevard. Duke did give me a price on that, and at the time, if we hired a contractor to do the boring, it was about $30,000, and then if they did the wiring, it was going to be about 40 or 45. So the credit currently that they're offering us, which is about $73,000, is pretty close to that same number. But I feel that we need to go back to the residents in Bellevue, States Island, and ask them that question, if they're willing to take that credit and use it to harden all the way to Gulf Boulevard. And then, once everything's done, we'll do a detailed audit to make sure that where the money was spent. This is a separate account. It's not part of the city's general funds, or it's a capital fund project. And it's being paid for with assessments that we collect every year. And a resident with the assessment, if you had underground lines, your assessment is $1,267.70 a year. If you had an overhead, it's $1,611.70 a year. And when I say that, I mean overhead to your house from the street. About 25 people paid it completely up front. And just some additional information on that is that there's once a year time frame that you can pay it off, and it's only in April of each year. That's been set up in the loan agreement. So in early April, we will calculate what that payoff is for each one of those, and if someone wants to pay it off, they're welcome to come in, and we will pay down the loan. Long term, what I think we will be looking at is we'll be adjusting the assessments once the project is closed out, because there is some savings. The people that paid up front, we'll have to refund some money to them, but the assessments, the best way to do that is just reduce the assessment over the long term. Do you have any questions?
Glenn, just like to bring up the wiring from 22nd to Bayshore to Gulf Boulevard. Going way back when, before you were here, the discussion was to go and do that originally. The only thing that deferred that was Duke Energy's plan to run a double loop system rather than a single. They changed the game, and that's what causes a lot of grief up here. But again, you know, those wires also pick up our sewer system on 22nd. And a good portion of the city would probably love to have that system running all the time rather than being out for 8 hours, which it has been in the past. And I know Bel Air Shore's sewer system ties into ours. So I know this is not the time for this discussion, but I'd like to put this on the next work session so we can discuss it fully and move forward to get those wires run from Bayshore and 22nd to Gulf Boulevard. Because the wires going behind the homes on 21st Street that feed us fail off. And that's one of the biggest failure rates, is the homes behind 21st Street where we lost power. So we haven't had any big storms since, but I'm sure if we have a little wind out there, we'll lose power. So all that money would be spent in vain if we didn't do the job the way it was originally planned from the get-go. That's all I have to say.
I think everybody recognizes the benefits of that. The concern is that it wasn't in the original scope of work. And if we obligate that money without consulting the residents, whether they accept and understand those benefits, or, hey, I want my money back because that wasn't in the original scope. That's where the city manager said, we really need to poll the residents and see what they want, just to keep the city out.
Unfortunately, when we had the big increase in money, that was pulled out of the project. So there's no real documentation, it's just everything that was discussed 3 to 5 years before that. So I think we need to have a discussion and cement this and move forward.
Does this require a petition?
I think we put it on the next work session. I've already nodded to Patty, and she caught it, so this is on the next work session.
I
And then we'll take
I would
I
think
yes.
we would do some type of petition, and I'll get some clarification from Chris Rowe about that, because I don't feel that we should go forward with that unless the majority of the residents in Bellevue Estates Island, it's your money, and if, you're fine with it, it's great that we were able to get $73,000 out of Duke, so that's a good thing. So, moving forward, I really believe it needs to have some type of participation from the residents.
I do have one more question. It's kind of a sideline of our topic, but whenever the project first began, we discussed much-needed road repairs in our neighborhood. Is that still something that, now that the project is coming to an end, that it's going to come up?
We're going to go out to bid. I was trying to jump off the last paving that we did on 3rd and 4th Street, but couldn't come to an agreement with the contractor without him getting some mobilization, so we're going to put out the paving to bid. We have, between savings, we have somewhere between $180,000 and $190,000 of money to do paving, and about, don't quote me on that number, but it's probably 50 or 60 for curb work. And what my intent was to do is do as much of that as I can. And every year we've put money aside. We're a little ahead of the game. This year we put $120,000 in the capital budget for paving, with the focus being on Bellevue Estates Island, because we kind of backed it up until this project was done. So that is the intent.
Thank you. Any other council questions?
Can I just make a statement? I think this is helpful. Thank you, Lynn and Glenn, for putting this together for other projects moving forward. Very helpful to hang on to.
Citizens? Mr. Hansick? Yeah, sure. This way everyone can hear it. Yeah, that's fine, man. Thanks.
John Hansick, 103 22nd Street. All right, we've had this evaluation, and Lynn indicated a recommendation or evaluate the possibility of undergrounding from 22nd to Gulf Boulevard. And then he's discussing the power lines that run on a property line between 22nd and 21st. Seems to have a history of failures. I don't know of any failures on that since I've been a resident here. I do know that the first or second summer, we had a transformer blow on my side of the street, the other side, the south side of 22nd, they had power. We were out for 12 hours. And then when the power company came to try to do it on a Sunday morning before 8 o'clock, some clown across the street on 23rd called the sheriff and stopped deputies, or stopped the construction from replacing the transformer. So this question about undergrounding or evaluating the potential for going from 22nd from Bayshore to Gulf, how does that affect the residents on the north and the south side of 22nd Street? If it does at all.
It has nothing to do with those residents. Basically, if the Bellevue Estates Island went forward, what we would be doing is in the right-of-way on 22nd Street, we would be putting in conduit and new wiring to Gulf Boulevard. The wiring that's behind your home, the wiring that's behind the homes between 21st and 22nd Street, there would be nothing done with that whatsoever.
Okay. I do have a second question, and I think it's somewhat been answered, but I'd like to get some clarification. I don't believe I've missed too many council meetings since becoming a full-time resident. I don't recall hearing anything about repaving BEI after undergrounding in previous meetings or work sessions. It may have been there, I may have missed it. So my question is, obviously it's being planned, it's being budgeted, potentially budgeted for. How does this affect the current repaving schedule in the remainder of the city?
Well, the streets, Donato, Alita, and 22nd down beyond the bridge, they were planned some years ago to be paved, and with this is my understanding, they were planned to be paved. With this project, the city opted to wait because there's no sense in tearing up a street twice.
I do recall that conversation. My apologies. So, okay, so this isn't going to affect the current schedule that's already approved in the fiscal year budget?
No, what we do, actually, we're getting ready to purchase a software program for paving condition index. And we're going to do some studies on every street. And what this does, it's a software program that you drive the streets and it
evaluates, basically. It tells you.
Evaluates the street, and then we'll have that data for all of the streets in the city. And going forward, then that's how we'll develop the long-term plan to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanzig. Any other citizen comments, questions? Back to council. Actually, back to you, Lynn. Do you have anything you need to add? I think we're finished, right? Thank you for the report. Glenn Gunn, thank you for your work in putting this all together for the city manager. And it was a success by all evaluations. And Harrison Avenue looks like it's going to be probably next on deck here. So if it goes through. Okay, next we go into the individual reports, and the first is the city attorney. Fred?
No report.
Thank you. City manager?
The code report is behind my tab. The accountant gave me the financial report on Friday, and I made copies for you. I am working with him to come to a meeting probably when we do, we're going to do a quarterly snapshot, I'll call it. And then he's agreed to come to a meeting and give the council an update on that. So that'll probably be.
This is for what?
Pardon?
This is for what? For the county?
For the accountant to come to a meeting and kind of give you a financial update. And that'll probably be at the April meeting at this point in time, because we're working on putting some data together. And along with that, we've been working on kind of going through all the costs for the Bellevue Estates Island and trying to get those numbers tamped down to where they're at. Next work session, we agreed, is the 19th of February. Everybody's fine with that? And then in the future, they will always be on the third Monday,
Except if it's a holiday.
except if it's a holiday. And hopefully, I don't think we have any other holidays. I left something also at your, to look at. We budgeted to do something with this sign out here, possibly digital. I left some proposals there, and maybe we'll, what I'd like to do at the work session, this is something to take home, we're not going to discuss tonight. We'll just chat about that at the work session. Don't forget your traffic comments by next Monday, the 10th. And the valve company is coming February 17th, the week of. That's what they told us. So, any questions for me? That's all I have.
Lynn, I had one question for you. You gave us security measures, I read them. Again, it's something, and I'm glad we kept that, we're going to keep that in the shade, but comments on that, did you want to deal with that at a work session, or you want comments from us? This all needs to stay, security needs to stay in the shade.
It'd probably be simpler to keep it that way if you just send me any comments that you have about that. We are looking at, we're looking at the proposals and trying to get some updated proposals for what they recommended, because they're a little different, pretty close, but so we have talked to some security firms, and we'll see what those costs come in at.
I've got a question about your budget numbers. I walked through the marina today, the parking lot, and walked past Morgan, and had some thoughts about the parking fees that we collect here in the city. And the thought was, do we break those out by line item for each individual parking lot? And I think the answer was you banded it all together in one.
Except the marina.
So that's what kind of brings this to this observation is looking on page 1 of your financial report for December of 2019. It looks like the budgeted amount for parking meter fees is $75,000 a year. Is that, am I interpreting that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so $75,000 is what you project for parking meter fees for all of our parking lots. And we band the other ones together, except that the Marina Fund breaks out that one. And I see there that the projected revenue for the parking fees in the Marina is budgeted at $6,500.
Right.
Okay, so the observation I had was when I look at the size of that parking lot compared to these other places, obviously there's a competitive edge to Morgan Park because of the beach and the restrooms. We've got tennis courts, proximity to the bridges in here. When I look at the size of that parking lot, and it's supposed to provide renourishment, substantiation for renourishment, right? So the parking stuff there. My question is, it's metered in there, but obviously the projected amount of revenues is only like 8% of our total parking fees. So my question is that something that could be improved if we just change the signage there, saying, hey, public parking here, beach access? I mean, it's very poorly.
Well, I don't think you get, to be honest with you, I don't think you get a lot of people that park there to go to the beach. You know, maybe we could put some more signs in. I don't know historically if that will change it, but it might. You know, that's, you know, putting a couple signs up is not a big deal. But I don't know that, because the closest access there is Harrison. It doesn't help the ones going down like to Howard or any of that. The benefit of Morgan, and Morgan is the preponderance of the money, you know, and that's because it's on the beach.
No, I just noticed the imbalance. I mean, we've got this huge parking lot there, and there in letters this high, they're saying beach access 300 feet this way. And then there's a sign above that says, you know, enforcement strictly enforced. So if somebody driving by says, oh, I'm not there. I'm just saying, maybe it's just a matter of advertising or marketing that parking. Maybe we'd see some incremental increase in that.
As a spin-off to that, at maybe adding a sign at Morgan Park that says additional parking at the marina. Because I watch a lot of people park here, they drop their families at the first beach access and park here and walk over. So,
Not as much as it used to be.
I'm certain they would do the same there. If there's no parking, they could drop the family at Morgan Park. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't we try to up the rate at Morgan Park so it's maybe a bargain to park at the marina? I don't know.
No,
Is that-
it's the same.
It's the same. We never did increase the price any. Okay.
No, and we are within line with what the local area.
Yeah, but you know, my feeling is if Morgan Park's always full and there's no parking, that means we're not charging enough. You know, we could charge a little more at that park and get a premium because there's such limited parking in there. And as a resident, I can't drive there and park because there's never any spaces available.
That's correct.
So
But you can rent your bicycle.
I could if I wanted to. Well, I have the floor, let me ask a couple other questions. There was, I noticed the report, the code report looks really good. They look like they're doing a great job, so kudos to the officer that's doing all of this. But short-term rental, what was the outcome of that one on Bay Shore? What is going on there? It seems like they're continuing to offend and don't really care that it costs them money and they're not paying the fee.
That's going to be one of the workshop items that I'm going to put on the agenda. See, I like to surprise you with agenda items.
Had it as unfinished business, but since we were talking about this report.
We need to, and Fred's going to have to look at this also, we need to look, and I do think we can increase our fine level. That house had another hearing last week. It's another $1,500, $5 for the hearing and $1,000 fine. So that is
They currently owe $6,000.
70, almost $8,000.
$8,000.
Yeah, with interest and what have you. I do understand, of course, the homeowner told me last time that, because I was the one that caught her last time, and unfortunately I was the one that caught her this time. But she told me last time she was going to sell the house, and that was 4 or 5 months ago, and then we caught her again. And so, but I know there's been some work being done there, so I don't know, maybe they are going to sell it now. They're in
So how do we
California.
move to lien the property for the $8,000?
It's already leaned.
Okay.
Well, the last 1,500 isn't leaned yet, but the 6,000 is, I know Patty's already done that lien. And we have another one on Gulf Boulevard that we'll be having a hearing on. Is it the 19th, Patty? Do you remember?
Those must be the two that I saw on.
We caught this one. I knew I saw that house somewhere, but I went to visit them today because Danny's on a cruise right now, so you can't wait. Because tomorrow they may not be there. So, but we've already sent the notice out today on that house.
And then, any word back regarding that marina outfall and maybe using that as
I haven't.
contractor parking?
I need to do something about that. Had a few other things on my plate lately. So,
And then I think you already talked about the other item I had for you was the paving on Bellevue Island Estates. But when you're getting bids, can you look at tailing in that little section of Belle Isle between
That we talked
Hibiscus?
about.
Yeah, that one patch.
yeah, it's
that
all
was
going to
going
be based on square footage,
Right, but since they're
or square
doing,
yards, I should say.
when you have them mobilized, maybe just have them do that one little block, and then Belle Isle's in good shape.
We'll see where we go with the money.
Your comments from city manager.
Yeah, I have one. In reviewing all of these invoices for our attorney, they're getting, substantially high. and I'm looking at the breakdown of some of these invoices. Have we supplied the public records request? Is that all done so we can start to see a decrease in these bills, invoices? Because roughly from September through December, we spent around $2,700, and then an additional $3,900 was spent, but it was labeled as partial, so it was only part of the conversation between the attorney and members. But so I don't know the percent of that actual dollar amount, what was real in regards to public records. But have we done it all so that we can start to reduce this attorney's bill?
The public records, Fred, it was middle of December. It was turned over. Maybe Patty knows better.
It was in the latter part of December.
It was December 12th.
That they were turned over to.
Returned to the city on December 12th.
Yeah, and Patty. So, yes, that portion of that public records request has been completed.
Okay, so we won't be having a charge on this. I haven't looked at the January one, right? So it's nothing on there for it, because we just got it tonight.
I don't think so. No, I don't think there is.
Okay.
I mean, I looked at it today.
Okay, that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Council comments, questions? Citizens? None? Okay. Thank you, City Manager. City Clerk? Okay. Thank you. No unfinished business. We go to City Council comments. Even month, we start with Robin Aki.
No comments. I think this meeting was very nice. Good job, guys.
Thank you. Mark Beam?
All the questions I had were answered, and looking forward to the workshop to discuss it.
Very well. Good guys.
Nothing to add.
Joe Shirley?
Nothing.
Chris Swope?
Nothing.
This is too easy. No, I know you got something. And I've been talking about the same thing, so it may be more. Go ahead. I saw your thing. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, on a weekly basis, I'm seeing stuff from the Florida League of Cities, hey, spread the word on this, the preemption stuff and short-term rental stuff. And my concern is that I'm not seeing a lot of getting ahead of this issue. I mean, I see this tsunami building there, and I'm not quite sure. I thought we're a petty person which way I'm going to go, whether or not we're going to successfully defend this home rule. I have my doubts. But anyway, my emphasis at this point is to get ahead of this problem, not just be reactionary, but I'd like to see us get proactive in this thing, to start thinking about what are the potential impacts of this stuff. Some of that is outlined in some of the stuff coming out from Florida League of Cities, noise, parking, trash, etc. Law enforcement's going to be a big one. We just heard from the sheriff's office tonight that, hey, the biggest issue we had was in the short-term rentals here. It's not the residents here that's causing the problem. So if you look at the budgetary impact, I mean, the law enforcement contract is one of the biggest drivers in our expenditures, and who knows what's going to happen there. I don't know whether it's just going to be rolled in and absorbed, or whether there's going to be some impacts there. What's going to be the impact on the demographics of Bel Air Beach? Is the age, the average age going to change? Traffic congestion, what's going to happen there? Property values, I'm not quite sure. What are going to be the increased impacts with respect to our beaches and the access? It's low right now, but if you have a high turnover with short-term rentals, obviously we're going to start seeing some more impacts there. The Bel Air Beach strategic plan starts off by making assumptions, and there was 10 of them originally, and as part of our work session, it's time to go in there and take a look at these things with the idea in mind that if this preemption home rule stuff changes, it's going to change our assumptions. And we need to start thinking about what are some of those changes there and get ahead of this stuff. More importantly, are there areas that we can capitalize on and possibly have fees, or by understanding the impacts, we can start adjusting our cost basis and that sort of thing, user fees, whatever, and try to get ahead of this thing so that hopefully, if this thing passes, if we thought about it correctly, done our homework, and prepared for it day one, we've got some ordinances and codes and resolutions in our back pocket that we can just throw right on the table, and from day one, start solving the problems, not have to spend a year trying to figure out the impacts and how we're going to deal with it. So that's where I'm kind of going with that. There's been some question, I had some discussions with the city manager about how this stuff affects homesteading. And as I started looking into this a little bit further, I think there's some questions and research that need to be done on the implications of homestead. The thinking is that, hey, your homestead, you cannot do any short-term rentals. But when we research it a little bit, there's this Florida statute 196061, which is labeled rental of homestead to constitute abandonment. What they do is, for tax purposes, they create the linkage between short-term rentals and you're abandoning your homestead. Well, I think there may be some provisions in that Florida statute that allow homesteaders to capitalize on some short-term rentals. It talks about 30-day limits, 2 consecutive years, and things like that. And I'm thinking we may need some legal research done on that to help the council understand what the implications are. When I start running just some random numbers, not even looking at the non-homesteaders, when I just look at the homestead people, if there was a loophole in this thing, and they're allowed to do a short-term rental less than 30 days for 2 consecutive years, I mean, there's revenue flowing through here. You know, just I get a quick number: 20% of condo people homestead, 30% of the single-family dwelling homesteaders, and it could be in excess of $1 million of revenues flowing through the city that you may be able to capitalize on. So I throw that out there. Put on your thinking hats, and when we get together for the next work session, maybe start thinking ahead of some of these assumptions and what the impacts might be. That's all I have.
Thank you. To show you that we don't talk because of the sunshine laws, I have similar comments that I was going to make. I sent everyone on the council an article from the Bee that said city preps for fight with state, and that was about Indian Rocks, who lost their grandfathering and started with the short-term rental. And it was funny because it happened, this article, I had no idea this was coming out, it happened the day after I was speaking about this at the last work session, about where our legislature was going. And that's what I want to focus on tonight, folks, is where our legislature is going and what we can do about it. I wish I had the answer for you. I don't have an answer. I have an offer, and I'm going to make it to you first, and I'm going to make it to the city, to the Big C next. I've been mayor for just about 1 year now, and I've sat by and I've jumped into a lot of stuff that I understood. I've jumped into some stuff that I didn't understand. But I've sat back and I've watched how some of these organizations like the Suncoast League of Cities and the Big C and things operate. Mark Bean was with me at the last meeting, and afterwards he said to me, you know, the Big C is really influential. And I said, is it? And here's my problem, okay? And I'm going to speak, I've asked to speak to them next month, but I'm going to give you a preview. The Big C meets every month, all the mayors on the coast, and we're all uniquely situated. Yet, we have a budget of $800 in the bank right now. We can't go up to Tallahassee, but we're going to have to figure out how we can. We had a press conference not too long ago whereby all the mayors banded together and said this short-term rental bill is no good. This was before the session even got in because we knew it was coming back. It's back, folks. It's like Jason and Friday the 13th. It just keeps coming back, okay? And you can't kill it. And I was one of 3 mayors who went to Suncoast League of Cities for their annual planning. It was myself, Mayor Kritikos of Clearwater, and Larry Lund of Treasure Island. And we spent our whole morning giving them priorities. And this was one of the priorities. I said, we can't allow this thing to pass. It's going to kill the coastal communities. And then what comes out is their legislative priorities: resiliency, transportation, modernizing wastewater. That wasn't one thing that the people in the city wanted. Not one thing that the mayors on the coast wanted. We had been told that Gulf Boulevard is a secondary corridor. We're not getting any money on transportation. These folks, okay, and this is going to get me in trouble, but these folks are allocating what's best for their city. And I said when I was sworn in, I'm going to do what's best for our city. So I'm going to address the Big C next month, and I'm going to try and call them to action and say, We need to get our message out there. Nicholas DeSigli is our representative. Have you ever seen him here? I've never seen him at Mayor's Council meeting. I've never seen him at a Big C. He was invited, and I spoke with the person who chairs it, and he said he doesn't want to come because you're going to beat us up, beat me up. You're darn right we're going to beat you up. You vote against home rule every chance you get, okay? He's voting for this, and he's on this committee that's going to hear this tomorrow. Tomorrow they're going to hear about some of these bills that I'm telling you about, the short-term rental and the Burt Harris Act reform, okay? Vice Mayor, Tallahassee has us figured out every which way but loose, okay? They've got the short-term rental bill, which is being pushed through by one group of individuals. And they didn't get it through last time, but they're trying again this time. And if they don't get it this time, they'll do it again next time. It's passed through its committee, it's coming up for more committees. It's moving. Don't know if it'll make it. If that happens, read what happened. I'll tell you what one Indian Rocks resident said, okay? One person said that in one 30-day period, the house next door to hers was rented 9 different times with 44 different guests. Yes, Vice Mayor, we will get some money out of all of that, maybe from non-homesteaded, and we're going to watch our property values plummet, because next to you will be a B&B for some people, and they're not all going to take their time to rent to good people. I am a Republican, and I'm supporting people who are Democrat, because they stand for home rule. Okay, that's how strongly I feel about this thing. We have people who get it and we have people who don't get it. And some of our people don't get it. So please, pick up the phone. They don't respond to emails. Call them. Be polite. Tell them not to vote for this stuff. This doesn't help. I know you did, John Hansing. I heard about it. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's what we want, okay? We need people to just pick up the phone and call. I'm calling them tomorrow. I'm going to tell them, don't do this. And this Burt Harris Act. I mean, Marv and I were sitting there as Jay Draganow of Trask Firm gave a briefing to all the city mayors last month at the Big C. They are going to try and pass an expansion of the Burt Harris bill. I thought it was just going to, when you gave a variance, you had to give it to everybody in town. That's one of the things it says. So imagine that. If the Board of Adjustment gives a variance, everybody in the town now has to get that, okay? But it's even worse, okay? It's going to take away the ability of the city to recoup its legal fees. Right now, most of these Harris Act suits are settled. So they're saying, oh, there's only been one court case. That's because most of them get settled. They're going to make it even tougher for the city to settle and more expensive. I'll tell you how bad it is, okay? And what people will be able to say is, you've passed legislation, it affects my property. For example, we have bushes or hedges ordinance that it can't be, 8 feet, 10 feet high. Somebody could say, you know what, that cut out my ability to have privacy. I can't rent my backyard out anymore. And I'm going to sue you. And I'm not just suing you for that, for the value of the bushes, I'm suing you for all the future potential rental income of my property. It's so bad that Attorney Draganow said, don't bother to pass legislation. That's his advice to his cities for if this thing passes. It doesn't mean we're going to sit by. That's why I asked Chief Burton tonight, what can we do and get us these occupancy things? We can pass that in advance. I spoke to Mayor Schmidt across the street. They just passed a noise ordinance. And I said to him, does the sheriff have the enforcement tools on this? And if they do, then we can pass something like that. Little things that we can have done in advance that can help us. But this is something where we need the city. This isn't something whether you like me or don't like me or like this council or don't like this council. It's do you like what you really have, okay? And if you like what you really have, then tell these folks up in Tallahassee no. What I'm offering to you is I will work with anybody in this city, and maybe we need to get together as a group. This is not a sunshine issue because this is not coming before our council, okay? I can work with anybody here, and I need to get something because I'm not so sure that Suncoast League of Cities and Big C is going to be able to carry this torch for us. This is something we may have to do on our own, and we need to get other people involved and other cities involved. We need to, for example, one thing I thought about was just get a petition for everybody in this town. Could you imagine if I could go to Nick DeSigli and say, Nick, you see this? This is my 1,500 voters, and they're not voting for you if you vote for this anymore. Suncoast League of Cities says, oh, they know it and they don't want to be beaten up. I'm sorry, they don't know it because they keep bringing it back, and we don't want it. Maybe you do want it. I don't know. Let me hear from you, okay? My telephone number is out on the City Hall site, okay? Get in touch with anybody over here. Marv Beam has been with me on these meetings. I will put together whatever we have to do. We need to figure out a way to lobby these people. We may not get it for this session, folks. The session is in play right now. It goes for a few more weeks. But this is something, they're coming back. If this stuff doesn't pass, they'll be back again, and we need to be ready for this next fight, because we will truly lose our ability to govern this city. We're going to be sitting up here and having proclamations that it's, National Flag Month or something like that. I will not, and no one here will be able to pass anything if they get their way. Got to take care of this at the ballot box, folks, okay? So I'm offering my assistance however we can do it. I know other people don't feel, that feel similar to the way I do. I said this, and a former councilwoman posted something with all the phone numbers out on Nextdoor. That's what you should be using Nextdoor for. That's great. Keep using it for that. And maybe if we could let everyone in the city know, maybe you could help me out there, Wayne. Let everybody in the city know we want to do something about this, okay? And we're going to stand together. And I think in my opinion, my humble opinion, the only thing they understand is votes, because nothing else is working. You can't be nice to them because we're being nice and they're passing it through committee after committee. So it won't be Bel Air Beach the way it's always been. That's all I want to say. I'm here to help you. We'll do what we can do, and let's figure out some kind of a plan. I don't have a solution. I have an offer of assistance for you, okay? So that's all we've got. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? Second? All in favor? Aye. Aye? Thank you, folks. We're adjourned.